Be cool, be kind, be classy. A cupcake so sweet and sexy. Have fun, enjoy the journey. Just have a good attorney. No big whoop, no biggie. She lives near New York City. Not just a YouTube show. When you know, you better grab a straw. Learn about the law. It's cool here in the shade, sipping motions of lemonade. Cool heads will prevail, kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Oh, Melanie Little is going live. Oh no, where is Melanie? Follow the island's melody. Is a concert within reach. No surprise, she's at Jones Beach. She heard some music far away. Captain Jack Stack Harbor Bay. He sings and his piano plays. Not all sounds are waterways. Speaking Yiddish and Latin, it's not just for Manhattan. It's for Goethe and Meshegas. Ridiculous that insanus. Oy vey, Marcus. Proset, that's for schmucks. Be cool, be kind, be classy. My cupcake's sweet and sassy. Not just a YouTube show. When you know. Cool heads will prevail. Kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Melanie Little is going live.
Hello, my friends. Good morning. Good morning, and thanks so much for coming to hang out with me. Today's Monday, October 28th, 2024. And welcome to the UK. This is a worldwide story, you guys. This Delphi story may make Proctor look like a Boy Scout. Let's just put it that way. From what I'm hearing from many who are in the courtroom, many who are reporting to you on a nightly basis, and I'm sure you're watching all of them. Hi, South Africa. Wow, look at you guys coming in from South Africa and Norway. This is a worldwide story. And so much of it is because there's been so much secrecy around this case coming out of Delphi, Indiana. Let's give people a chance to get in here. And, this is always about the victims. And it's hard for me to cover stories about kids because I have 5 kids of my own. And this story is about Abigail Williams and Liberty German, 13 and 14 years old, who went for a hike on a beautiful day in February 13th of 2017. And their bodies were found the next day on February 14th of 2017. There was no arrest made in this case until almost 5 years later. And that is when Richard Allen was arrested. He has since been in custody for about 2 years. And for 18 months of that, he was in prison, not jail, prison, in solitary confinement, 23 hours a day. Yeah, Delphi told Canton, hold my beer. Yep. That's right, Gen X or Meg. That is right. In my opinion, I'm not shy about my opinions. I'm going to keep my opinions to myself for the beginning of this because I think a lot more people need to know about this story. And I covered this story with, here's Ed Wallace. Hi, Ed. I watched you guys last night on the ballistics. If you guys didn't watch Duty Ron and Ed last night, they covered the ballistics portion of the testimony that came out recently, and Lauren Matthias from Hidden True Crime was on. I watched most of it. I need to go back and watch the rest of it because that science is way too complicated for, a silly lawyer like me. But Ed Wallace is the go-to in everything forensics. So Ed, maybe you'll come on one day and explain it to us. That'd be great. But what I want to focus on today, and today we're going to stick to the documents because that's what we do here on a legal-based channel. We stick to the documents. Judge Gull also may make Auntie Bev out of Norfolk County, Massachusetts look like, Shirley Temple. I can't even think of a comparison. But the shenanigans, the tomfoolery, and the ballyhoo that has gone on during the pendency of this Delphi case is really unparalleled, in my opinion. Gag orders and motions and the judge taking Richard Allen's lawyers away, and his lawyers, without him wanting his lawyers discharged, and taking it all the way up to the Supreme Court of Indiana to be able to get back on the case. It just, yeah, the secrecy is suspect, says Karen. There's so many of you I know probably know a lot more than I do about this case. I went back and I looked at my playlist, and I did a couple of shows with Duty Ron. Ed, I think you were away on assignment. It was all the way back in June of 2023. And we did a show with Anthony Ganji, who has a YouTube channel called Tear Talk. And he is a prison expert. He's worked in many, many prisons. And Duty Ron was questioning the fact that Richard Allen, at that time, it was in June of 2023, was being held in a prison instead of a jail because the warden at the jail said we can't protect him. And we were asking Anthony about the solitary confinement, and he said, well, it's not really solitary confinement because there would be a prison guard assigned to him 24/7 that would be watching him and communicating with him for 24 hours a day. And in retrospect, when I went back and watched that show yesterday, I was thinking, oh, there was a prison guard watching him 24. His only communication that he had was with a prison guard. And now these confessions are going to come into play this week at the trial. These alleged confessions that Richard Allen made to his wife and maybe others over the phone. And it's going to be so interesting to see these confessions and to see the conditions under which these confessions were made. Because when I listened to that yesterday, I was like, oh, so there was a prison guard with him, and that was his only communication for something like 18 months. Yeah, it was safekeeping. That's why they kept him there as safekeeping. Even keep in mind that even Brian Kohberger is being held in a jail, as was Sarah Boone, as was every other defendant in the country that's not yet been convicted. They're kept in a jail, not in a prison. And was it one of the corrections officers or the guards that was wearing the Odinist patches on his uniform? Or the patches that they admitted were not exactly Odinist, but something similar? Right. So I started digging into this case around the time that I was covering it with Duty Ron, because I don't think I had my own channel at the time. And then I became fascinated in September of 2023 when the Franks motion came out about the Odinist theory and the Norse paganism theory that the girls' bodies were posed and that there may have been some symbols left at the scene. And there may have been some characteristics of perhaps a ritualistic ceremony or killing, because we didn't know anything about how the girls were found, how the bodies were positioned, what evidence was left at the scene. And we did hear some of it this week from some of the witnesses. Zelda Kelly has a YouTube channel. She reads tarot cards, right? Zelda's here to tell us they are posed like two tarot cards. Yeah, because of the gag order. And then some photos leaked from the defendant's attorney's office by someone who worked there, used to work there. The photos got out to some YouTubers, and it was a whole thing. A whole thing. So what I want to talk about today is, while my fellow law tubers, some of them are in court in Delphi, hardcore. Andrea Burkhart and Lawyer Lee and Lauren Mathias from Hidden True Crime, who's not a law tuber, but she's a YouTuber, she's a journalist. We're sleeping in line to get into the courtroom. I think there's 24 seats for the public every day. And in order to get a seat in the courtroom, you have to be in line all night. And I was sending Lauren messages of encouragement because she was posting pictures of herself sitting in line with 3 jackets on and 4 hats and a coat, freezing cold, in a like soccer mom chair, that you bring to soccer games, to get a seat in the courtroom. Bob and Ali Mata were there also, but they don't have to wait in line because they are friends, or they've been gifted a seat by the Kathy Allen, the defendant's wife. And it's hardcore for those who are braving the cold. They now have some line sitters. Andrea Burkhardt is amazing. She's been doing 6-hour, 5-hour recaps every night. She doesn't sleep, but she's so passionately involved in this case because she thinks that it should be public. She made a motion to allow the public to have access to the court exhibits. Hi, Ozzy. Hi, Ozzy. I saw that you did some stuff in this too. I haven't even had a chance to look at it yet. Andrea made a motion because, yep, I said Bob Mata. Yep, Bob Mata too. Did a show with Ali the other night on this last week. I don't remember when it was. Days are blending together. The Sarah Boone trial felt like it was a year, but it was only 6 days. And more people need to have eyes on this case, and more people need to know what's going on in Indiana, because it's crazy. It's crazy. Like, if you thought Karen Reed was crazy, buckle up, buttercups, because this is crazier. And I think one of the relatives of Richard Allen brought banana bread for everybody one day, and the line was giving out banana bread to the people who are sleeping outside. I mean, it's crazy. Okay, Bob Mata said he doesn't believe the Odin theory. Okay, I'm here to go over the motions today. It doesn't matter to me what other people believe, don't believe. It doesn't matter what we believe. It matters what the jury believes. Bob Mata, I like Bob a lot. I like Bob and Ali a lot. They're friends. So, we can agree to disagree. I don't know what I believe, but I think that the investigation was shoddy at best and, corrupt at worst. Kind of like the Karen Reed case. Kind of like a poor investigation. Kind of like confirmation bias. Kind of like when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Kind of like when you find the suspect and you try and make the evidence fit the suspect instead of the other way around. There's a lot of pressure on them to solve this case. And it was 5 years before they arrested Richard Allen. It's not about what's to be believed. It's about what the jury deserves to know. I agree, Alyssa. And should they have all the facts? Trial is not being streamed for the public. It's completely despicable. Thank you, Emily. Yeah, what day is it anyway, Santini? I have no idea what day it is. I have no idea. So I figured while all of my cohorts are really doing the hard work and sleeping in line all night and sitting in court all day and then coming back and reporting on it for 5 hours, I thought I could do my part by doing the documents with you and the motions that are being filed during the trial, because they don't have time to do that. They're trying to report on the testimony. And so here I am sitting in the comfort of my own studio, and I'm going to report to you about the things that maybe nobody's reporting about. Maybe they are, but this stuff is really interesting to me. And when this Frank's motion dropped in September of 2023, I started getting very interested in it. And then the Karen Reed case came along, and I became very interested in that because of my ties to Norfolk County, Massachusetts. So I can't really start from the beginning. Many of you know more about this case than I do. But what I want to do is I want to talk about this Norse paganism, Odinism, ritualistic killing theory that was not only brought out by the defense in September of 2023 in their Frank's motion, which is 134 pages, and was denied summarily without hearing, but it was also followed by some of the initial law enforcement that were assigned to this investigation. So it's not like the defense just pulled this theory out of the air and decided to, throw it out there and see what sticks like spaghetti on the wall. So let's take a look, because there's a question about whether or not the door to this theory was opened this week based on testimony elicited by the state. So let's first pull up the motion. To my knowledge, this has not been ruled on yet. If anyone knows any differently, please tell me. But to my knowledge, she has not ruled on this motion yet. It was just filed on the 23rd. Today is the 28th. So that was, what was that? What was that date? That was Thursday. I'm sure she hasn't ruled on it yet. Wednesday. It was Wednesday. morning. Anybody know? I don't think this is, I couldn't find a decision on this. So if you guys know more than I, as always, it's a very collaborative channel and I'm open to hearing what you guys have to say. Yes, I'm in my own studio and sleeping in my own bed and I'm not freezing cold. I can regulate my temperature. Thank you, Kate. But I thought I can do this for you guys because I know there are so many more people that are becoming interested in this case now that it's on trial, right? That is ridiculous, says Tail I Can Ferry. I know a lot of Wiccans and other spiritual disciplines, and not one of them believes in ritual sacrifice. Google Lupercalia. It's an ancient Roman festival that was held on Valentine's Day that involved animal sacrifice, bloodletting, and such things as that. Nudism. Nudism? Is that a thing? Judge doesn't rule on anything until the last minute. Good to know. Good to know. But these are the court papers. I'm not going to say my opinion one way or another. Is this stuff that the jury should hear about? Should they be given an alternative theory? When the sticks that were put on the girls were discarded and not even collected and tested until however long later, they were just kind of thrown in the pile? Is it suspicious to you that something like how many hundreds of interviews went missing from the first months of the investigation? There's missing video, missing cell phone extractions. There's a lot of things that are missing, right? Wiccans aren't Odinists, right? Let's just read the papers and let's try and keep the bickering in the chat to a minimum because Sarah and Shock and Hara and my other amazing moderators who are here with me today may pull their hair out. Hi, Team Brittany. Team Brittany's here. Little Cupcake is here. And I have the best moderators on YouTube. I do. But I've said from the beginning of this case, you're going to need to show me more than an unspent shell casing and a blurry video of a guy that may or may not be Richard Allen to convince me that he's connected to this crime. He volunteered the fact that he was there a couple of days after when law enforcement was looking for information. And, they picked him up 5 years later. So there's that. But I digress. So let's just look at the motion and then we'll come back and I want to look at the original Frank's motion, which has a lot more detail in it. Things that we don't know yet. Apparently the crime scene photos from everyone whose coverage I listened to, and I listened to as much as I could, but there's so much coverage between Andrea and Bob Mata and Allie and Lawyer Lee and Lauren. The crime scene photos were horrifically gruesome and very, very difficult to look at. Like I said, Andrea made that motion for the public to have access to look at the court exhibits, and it was denied. So the only people that are allowed to look at the court exhibits are credentialed media. And so many of you watch YouTube more than you watch mainstream media. And so the YouTubers are not going to be allowed to look at the evidence and report back to you about what the evidence is. All right. So this was a motion by the defense that was filed last Wednesday, October 23rd. And it's a motion to admit evidence of Odinism / Norse paganism / ritualistic killing. Comes now the accused, Richard Allen, by and through counsel, and moves this court to admit certain evidence that this court thus far has prevented the defense from presenting to the jury pursuant to its September 4th, 2024 order. And that was an order on what we are now calling motions in lemonade, because the closed captions once called them that. We have adopted that phraseology. It was a pretrial motion in lemonade. In support of said motion, the defense states the following. On Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024, CSI Brian Olehay, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. You can tell me. Spell it phonetically if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Olehay testified concerning various aspects of the crime scene. Okay, so this motion was made the day after his testimony. During his testimony, CSI Olehe indicated that the sticks covering the girls was an attempt by the killer to conceal the girls' bodies. On September 18th of 2023, the defense filed its first Franks memorandum in which the defense laid out in painstaking detail the various pieces of evidence that provide support for the theory that the crime scene contains various signatures related to Odinism/Norse paganism. Did I say Norse? Oh, come on. Four. On August 1st of 2024, the defense provided the testimony of Dr. Dawn Perlmutter to the court. Dr. Perlmutter provided her CV and testimony at said hearing. Dr. Perlmutter's experience included, among other things, training the FBI and other local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies concerning how to identify a ritualistic crime scene and literally writing the book on ritualistic crime scene identification used by local, state, and federal law enforcement. 6. After reviewing the crime scene photographs and other reports and documentation, Dr. Perlmutter's testimony included her assessment that the sticks on the bodies, F-tree, and other aspects of the crime scene were textbook signs of a ritualistic murder related to Odinism/Norse paganism, including sticks and blood on the tree to form runes and bind runes. 7. Dr. Perlmutter's belief did not come out of left field as law enforcement began investigating the Odinism/Norse paganism angle as early as 2 days after the girls were found. And law enforcement continued investigating the Odin/Norse paganism angle until the death of law enforcement officer Greg Ferenczi in 2021. 8. The state of Indiana has provided its explanation of what the sticks represent, concealment of the bodies, and Richard Allen has a Sixth Amendment right to offer the jury his alternative theory as to the reasons the sticks are aligned and arranged in the manner in which they are arranged. 9. Denial of this opportunity to present the jury all alternative explanations would leave the jury with only one explanation, the explanation provided by the state of Indiana. 10. Additionally, the sticks on the girls appear to be arranged in a pattern/arrangement, or at a minimum, using a person's own eyeballs, common sense, logic, and reason could cause a reasonable person to believe that the sticks were formed into some pattern/arrangement and weren't being used to conceal the bodies. 11. Therefore, it could or would be confusing to a juror who might think that the arrangement of sticks was intentionally placed in a certain arrangement on the bodies, but then those jurors aren't being provided with any explanation for the way the sticks are placed on the bodies in a certain arrangement. 12. Evidence of Norse paganism/Odinism would therefore assist the trier of fact and alleviate confusion for jurors. 13. Additionally, it has been learned at the August 21, 2024 hearing that the blood found on the F-tree resulted in the state of Indiana retaining a blood spatter expert more than 7 years after the murders. Dr. Perlmutter's testimony would be offered in part to counter the testimony of the state's blood spatter expert, and the accused has a Sixth Amendment right to counter their blood spatter expert's testimony. 14. Being able to provide evidence to the jury that Odinism/Norse, this is such a tongue twister, Norse paganism as an alternative explanation of the stick arrangement on the girls' bodies, including the testimony of Dr. Perlmutter, would offer the following. A rebuttal to the state of Indiana's explanation of why the sticks appear the way that they appear, consistent with the 6th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution. B, a rebuttal as to the state of Indiana's blood spatter expert. C, an alternative explanation to any confused juror who believes the sticks and blood on the tree weren't used for concealing the bodies, but rather believes that the sticks were arranged by a Norse paganist, Odinist, as part of a ritual. 15, defendant files this motion currently, in part, for purposes of a ruling in anticipation of the need to contact our witnesses in the event that the court reverses its ruling. XOXO, Andrew Baldwin, and his attorneys. Bradley Rosie, is that how you pronounce? I would say Rosie, but I think it's Rosie. Rosie? Okay. So in any case, your experts need to probably be flown in. They need to be housed. They need to be told. They need to clear their schedule. And they need to give their notices due time for that. Rosie, thank you very much, Beth Hammer. I thought so. It's Rosie. I would say, I'm Italian. In New York, he's Rosie. But that's that. So in order to understand this argument a little bit more, we need to go back to the Frank's motion that was filed in September. And that's what we're going to do as soon as I can flip the screen for you. But let's go to the chat for a second. Dr. Ross, thank you for becoming a new member. Hello, Liz Reed. Before my sister's case, I followed this one closely. Thank you for all your dedication covering both. Thank you, Liz. And, I'm always here. Always here for your sister's case, your parents, and your brother. That said, if anybody, there's a civil hearing today on the Karen Reed case in civil court in, I think, Brockton. If anybody has a Zoom feed link, I don't know that it's even going to be on Zoom, but it's a 2 p.m. hearing on the motion to stay. If anybody has a Zoom link hearing for that, we can cover that at 2 o'clock. I just need a link because I don't think it's going to be televised. If one of the mods can drop my email in the chat, and if anybody has it and you email it to me, I will take a look and see if we can cover that at 2. Debbie says, the patches on the prison guards were definitely Odinist. When they were told to remove them, one of the guards got it tattooed on his face. Thank you, Debbie, for your 5. And Liz, thanks again. Everyone spread peace. All families involved need that from us in any trial, of course. Of course. But justice for Libby and Abby, in my opinion, also means convicting the right person. What if there are other people? Many people think it couldn't have been just one person who committed this crime in the time in which the state says that it happens. It happened. A lot of people think that. So do we want to get to the truth, or do we want a conviction? And we're seeing that so often lately, where it seems to many of us that the state just wants a conviction. Right? Am I wrong? Jazia, thank you so much for being with me for 3 months, and says, thanks so much for covering the documents, Melanie. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to cover the documents, but you know who might not like the documents? YouTube. So if you would please indulge me, the reason that we are able to cover such difficult topics, and we often cover such difficult topics, is because I am lucky enough and blessed enough to have a sponsor. If you have not heard, there has been a major hack lately. There's hacks every day. Every day I get in the mail from companies that I've done business with who say that all my information has been leaked and that they're going to give me some free credit monitoring and peace out, basically. Well, there's been a major, massive breach lately. Many of you read about it. I think it was about a month ago. We covered it. There's been a lot of breaches. My sponsor can help you with that because your social security number, just like mine, was leaked to the dark web. But because I have a sponsor, the sponsor's name is Aura. They can help you with that. With a free 2-week trial, you can find out if your information has been leaked to the dark web. Let's listen to a quick word from our sponsor so that we're able to continue with the topic that YouTube might not like us to be covering. And I'll be right back. Today's video is sponsored by Aura. And it's a really important time to be talking about them because hackers may have stolen the social security numbers of every American. Over 2.9 billion records were stolen from National Public Data, which offers personal information to employers, private investigators, staffing agencies, and others doing background checks. These stolen records include a person's full name, address, date of birth, social security number, and phone number, along with alternate names and birth date. And members of this hacker group have reportedly released this information on the dark web for free. I don't know if you've ever had your identity stolen, but I've had clients who've had their identity stolen. And not only is it a major hassle, but oftentimes before you find out, it's too late. The damage can take years to undo, and it's a hassle that you definitely do not want to deal with. So if you haven't been taking precautions before with your personal information online, this should be a huge wake-up call. You've never been more vulnerable online than you are right now. But I'm not too worried about it because I use Aura. or alerts me if they find my phone number, my email, my social security number, or any other personal information on the dark web. They're going to let me know fast if anyone tries to use this information to access my credit or bank accounts. They give me up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario happen. They also provide a bunch of other features to keep you safe online, all inside one app. And you can go to my link at www.aura.com/MelanieLittle to try it for free for 14 days. That'll be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal information or data has been exposed. I highly recommend you do this right now, because not only is national public data not going to do anything to help you, they probably aren't even going to face any repercussions for this breach. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches. And if you don't want to either, you want to go to my link, www.aura.com/MelanieLittle, to try 2 weeks for free. You can thank me later. Thanks for listening. Okay, let's go back to the original Frank's motion, which was filed in September of 2023. And it's going to give us a lot of background and a lot of facts. We're sticking to court documents today. And then I'm going to show you something that Zelda just sent me. This may take more than one episode to get through, because it's 134 pages, but it's also important that I just don't even know where to cut it or cut it off. So I'm going to put on my best ASMR voice for you today and read you a story. It's going to be one of these things that you can listen to while you're in the car or at work, or rage cleaning or rage crocheting. And we'll stop every so often for questions, comments, concerns. This goes all the way back to September 18th of 2023. That was filed at 2:06 a.m. Trial attorneys never stop working. It's going to be hard for me to watch the chat while I'm reading to you, so just keep that in mind, that if you're trying to get my attention, I have to make it full screen so I can read it. This is a memorandum in support of the accused's motion for Frank's hearing. Comes now the accused, Richard Allen, by and through counsel, Andrew Day Baldwin, and Bradley Rosie, and files his memorandum in support of his request for a Frank's hearing. Introduction. Footnote 1. For the court's convenience, the defense has provided a glossary of names marked as Exhibit 125. This glossary provides an alphabetized list of almost every name mentioned in the memorandum, along with a brief description of their involvement. Introduction. Because the facts in this memorandum are dense for anyone not yet completely familiar with this case, the defense is providing this introductory section similar to the syllabus that often precedes a long and complex U.S. Supreme Court opinion. The purpose of this introductory section is to provide the court a general understanding of what to expect concerning the facts upon which the defense will be relying, and how those facts impact the legal arguments before providing the necessary detail, minutia, and notation to the record that could bog down the court as it attempts to unpack the defense arguments. The defense, therefore, will provide little attribution as to the source of the evidence in this introductory section, but will then provide proper attribution to the sources of the evidence throughout the body of the memorandum following the introduction. Table of contents. The first section is entitled 8 Things to Know. Just please take note that this is my cursor on your screen. It is not a fly. Please do not smash your very expensive LED television and send me a bill thinking you're killing a fly. Eight things to know. Overwhelming evidence in this case supports the following. 1. Members of a pagan Norse religion called Odinism, hijacked by white nationalists, ritualistically sacrificed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. 2. Very early on, those in charge of the Delphi murder investigation claim that they consulted with a Purdue professor concerning what resembled possible Odinism signatures left behind at the crime scene. After the Purdue professor proclaimed according to State Trooper Jerry Holman, that, quote, it was not Odinism or any type of cult worshiping or any type of group that would have conducted the crime, end quote. The Odinism angle was essentially abandoned. However, as of September 7th, 2023, the leaders of the Delphi investigation team, one, claim that they can't identify who this purported professor was. Two, have provided no reports from this purported professor. And three, have further indicated they may never be able to figure out who this professor is. Based in large part upon this mystery Purdue professor's opinion, the Delphi investigative leadership claimed that it essentially abandoned considering Odinite involvement in the murders. And then the years passed: 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. Thankfully, during those passing years, law enforcement officers Kevin Murphy, Greg Ferenczi, and Todd Click continued to pursue the truth. Because of their curiosity and investigative efforts, the evidence establishing the names of the likely murdering members of this Odinite cult became known to the Delphi investigative leadership no later than February of 2018. Due to either incompetence or a concerted intentionality, those in charge of the investigation refused to arrest or even properly investigate these obvious suspects. 3. On May 1, 2023, the state of Indiana, by way of prosecutor Nick McClelland, received a letter from former Rushville Assistant Police Chief Todd Click, now retired. Footnote 2. Find attached certified mail receipt showing that the Carroll County Prosecutor's Office received the letter on May 1, 2023, marked as Exhibit 1. As stated in the previous paragraph, Click, Murphy, and Ferenczi were three of the law enforcement officers who worked on the Delphi murder case, particularly focused on the Odinite angle as it intersected with suspects in Rushville, Indiana. After reading Richard Allen's probable cause affidavit, Click became concerned that the information contained in Richard Allen's affidavit pointing the finger at Richard Allen was far less compelling than the totality of the information that Detective Ferenczi, Detective Murphy, and Officer Click had accumulated during the Rushville portion of the investigation. The information that Murphy, Ferenczi, and Click had gathered during their investigation connected men who practiced Odinism in or near Delphi with another group of men who lived in Rushville, and then connected both groups of men to the murders. Footnote 3. Find attached the affidavit of Todd Click, marked as Exhibit 2. Click was concerned that for some reason, the leadership of the investigative team had failed to share with Prosecutor McClelland the evidence gathered by Click, Ferenczi, and Murphy. Click's concerns led him to seek out a lawyer to assist him in the drafting of a letter. This letter was then sent to McClelland. Footnote 4. A copy of that letter is attached here too and marked as Exhibit 3. This letter was not provided to the defense until after it was obvious from the last round of depositions that the defense, who had doggedly pursued witnesses as far away as Georgia, would certainly be talking with Todd Click. McClelland had this letter in his possession for over 4 months before turning it over to the defense. There could be no mistaking that this letter is exculpatory in nature and could have been used by the defense as it prepared for upcoming depositions. Somebody said they just arrested Todd Click weeks ago. Weeks ago, Lynn? Todd Click is in jail? Teresa says this case should terrify everyone. Right before trial. Right before trial says heavy metal rehab stays on the case, said they made sure he wasn't going to testify. They did arrest him on falsifying interviews for forging a signature. Okay, interesting. Todd Click is law enforcement. Hold on. I don't know which, it just says law enforcement officers. I don't know which organization he was with because so many. Oh, he was the former Rushville Assistant Police Chief, Todd Click. However, it is apparent that McClelland only offered up the letter after it was obvious that the defense team would soon be learning of the letter's existence. In other words, the defense team would obviously be meeting with or deposing Click in the next few weeks. At that time, Click most certainly would then reveal to the defense that in April of 2023, he, Click, had sent a letter containing exculpatory information to McClelland. At this point, McClelland had two distinct choices. One, sit on the exculpatory evidence, hoping the defense team would refocus its efforts on another angle of the investigation. Or two, disclose the exculpatory evidence, claiming that the contents of the letter were overlooked in the volume of discovery. He chose the latter. Unfortunately for the state, neither approach explains away the fact that Click specifically directed the letter to McClelland himself. And further, Click was so determined to ensure his information was consumed by McClelland that he directed the information directly to McClelland via certified mail. Yeah, he hired an attorney. And Ferenczi was murdered. Yeah, Ferenczi was murdered. This is the stuff of nightmares, I think. This is craziness. The letter is stamped received May 1, 2023, Carroll County prosecutor. Click's report landed at ground zero, a prosecutor's office with no more than 2 full-time prosecutors and a handful of full-time staff members at best. Could this exculpatory evidence have been completely overlooked? Not plausible. Not only did the prosecution withhold that letter from the defense, but law enforcement also withheld several other exculpatory pieces of evidence, including an 85-page compilation of reports by Click prepared in 2019, and several videos containing statements that support the defense theory of Richard Allen's innocence. This 85-page report detailed the investigative work performed by Click, Ferenczi, Murphy, and others, including the FBI. According to the summary of Click's investigation that he attached with his letter, quote, the Behavioral Analysis Unit, BAU, of the FBI determined that the individuals responsible for the homicides were involved in Nordic beliefs, end quote, footnote 5, which says, find attached the summary that Click attached with his letter marked as Exhibit 4. Odinists have Nordic beliefs. This was news to the defense, and that is in bold font and underlined, as no member of the unified command in charge of the investigation revealed this information to the defense during recent depositions. This includes Trooper Holman, who told the defense that he didn't remember if the FBI's BAU unit determined one way or another whether those with Nordic beliefs had been involved in the murders. Footnote 6. The defense will be providing all depositions identified throughout this document separately from the exhibits and will identify the depositions with letters for purposes of the record. I'm going to break from the document for a second to tell you that Holman has been on the stand, and correct me if I'm wrong, at least once. Was he called to the stand twice already? He's the lead investigator. He's the proctor. He's the Michael Proctor of this investigation, Jerry Holman. He is very soft-spoken on the stand, according to those in the courtroom. It's hard to hear him. Yep, he's been on the stand. He's been on the stand more than once, and he's been in the courtroom the whole entire time for all the rest of the testimony. So he knows what everyone has already testified to, and then he was called back on the stand a second time. He's very soft-spoken. People in the courtroom can't hear what he has to say. And according to those who are watching the testimony, some of the things that he has testified to are sus. At least twice, more than once. He's been sitting in court. Yep, he's been sitting in court every day. Marissa J says they've been calling police as needed to advance their narrative. Jenny says he was a shambles. I was trying to be nice. And it may be that the defense, the prosecution's case is crumbling 3 times, says TJ. Which is kind of odd. I don't know that I've ever seen a witness called multiple times on a case in chief. Sometimes a witness will be called back in rebuttal. But it's not that common. Phoebe says he testified twice. He sued Andrea Burkhart is so upset. I thought she'd cry from anger. He's got some bizarre ideas about interrogating witnesses. Yep. It's called the Reed technique, coincidentally. He had a really bad day yesterday. I think you mean Saturday, right? They have court on Saturdays in Indiana. Half day. Kathy says the truth is coming. Heavy Metal Rehab says it's because slippery Nick McClelland likes to cheat. Okay. They're trying to get ahead of this S show that the investigation was shady, shady. That's why police are questioning. That's why people are. Rossler's mom says shady, shady, in my opinion. This is why people are now questioning police more than ever. Yep. Saturday is half day. Saturday court is for suckers. And it's interesting because if you watch the different shows of the different people that have been in the courtroom, everyone's got something different to report, or they focus on different things and they try and get through all the testimony. But it's like the jurors, right? They're taking notes and the jurors are able to ask questions. But at the end of the case, they're relying on their notes, and not everyone's notes are going to be the same, right? Interesting, right? So if you listen to Andrea and then you listen to Lee and then you listen to Lauren, you might hear different things about what they remember and what they wrote down and what their notes say. And that's exactly the same as what's going to happen to the jury, in my opinion. At least up until the time of this filing. I got to remember where I was. I think that's where I was. The prosecution has provided no evidence whatsoever of the findings of the FBI's BAU unit concerning involvement of Odinism in the murders. None. The letter that Click sent to McClelland was the first time that the defense had heard that the FBI actually believed that Odinists were likely involved. In other words, this report contained exculpatory evidence that Unified Command concealed from the defense. This information was and is crucial for Richard Allen's defense. Some of this exculpatory evidence in the form of videos was finally released to the defense on September 8th of 2023, over 9 months after defense counsel entered their appearance. RC says if you've ever been to Rushville, you would know of their involvement. I would love to have Andrea on. She's very busy. She's been on like a lot of shows lately, and she's in court all day. Then she does her own show at night. But yeah, I'm definitely going to reach out to her. Because Andrea was outraged at what she saw in court on Saturday. Outraged. Like she was on the verge of tears, just because, and I know because I get the same way when I'm really passionate about something, like it upsets me to the point of just wanting to like cry. And I don't know, maybe she wasn't. I don't know her personally, so I don't know if she was on the edge of tears, but it seemed like it to me. Like she was outraged. The defense is still reviewing this September 8th evidence dump. In the brief time the defense has had to review this newly received evidence, it has found exculpatory evidence both in the videos the defense has watched and the documents that the defense has received. While the prosecution has been holding on to this exculpatory evidence, Richard Allen has been living in hell. Lastly, the evidence will show that the week of August 28th of 2023, Prosecutor McClelland and State Trooper Jerry Holman requested a meeting with Todd Click. By this time, the defense team had taken several depositions, including Holman, Liggett, and Lazenby, and the prosecution and Delphi investigative leadership now knew that for a while, the defense team had been aware of the Odinist evidence, at least the evidence that the prosecution turned over to the defense, scattered throughout multiple hard drives and many flash drives. The prosecution had learned in early August, that the defense had figured out the strong Odinist ties to the crimes, despite the apparent attempts of the prosecution, Liggett, and Holman to hide this exculpatory information from the defense. Wanting to allay his fears that an innocent man was sitting in Westville, Click agreed to attend the meeting with Holman, hoping that he would be learning that evidence did in fact exist linking Richard Allen to the murders. Click's hopes were dashed. Paragraph 17 of Click's affidavit reads as follows. Upon directing the letter to McClelland, I heard nothing from the prosecutor's office or any other members of Unified Command until I received phone calls on August 23rd and August 25th, 2023, which involved brief discussions regarding scheduling. During these phone calls, it was requested that I meet with Trooper Holman during the week of September 4th of 2023. I was informed that law enforcement officials intended to sit down with me and discuss with me the reason why Richard Allen was responsible for these crimes. I was told that he, Jerry Holman, wanted to put my mind at ease. However, during the meeting with Detective Holman and a second detective whose name I'm unfamiliar with, there was no discussion or offerings as to why they believed Richard Allen was guilty of the charged crimes. I believe the interview was an attempt by them to clean up their loose ends, knowing that they had given very little, if any, attention to the investigative efforts of myself, Detective Ferenczi, and Detective Murphy. 4. Not only did Carroll County Sheriff Tony Liggett fail to include all this Odinite information in his October 13th, 2022 affidavit for search warrant, and not only did McClelland and the Unified Command withhold exculpatory evidence, Liggett also concealed damaging witness statements that devastate Liggett's timeline, a timeline Liggett needed to be true in order to place Richard Allen at the trail when Abby and Libby were abducted. Additionally, Liggett lied in his affidavit about the statements of another key witness, further devastating Liggett's timeline. And I'm going to break for a second to just point out to you that this reminds me of Trooper Paul. Trooper Paul was given a conclusion, and Trooper Paul was told to reach that conclusion and reverse engineer how Officer John O'Keefe was murdered based on their theory. And this, to me, sounds similar to that. 5. Richard Allen has zero connections to any pagan cult or pagan cultists, and furthermore, no forensic evidence, such as DNA or electronic evidence, links Richard Allen to the girls or to the crime scene, i.e., he is a completely innocent man. Yes, this is true too. No one on the bridge identified Richard Allen, so none of the witnesses who testified so far in the trial, breaking again, have been asked, do you see Bridge Guy in the courtroom today? Can you point to him? Don't we see that in every single trial? And then can you describe to him or point to him? And then they say, oh, he's the man sitting in the blue shirt at the defense table wearing whatever. Or they point. Not one person, not one of the eyewitnesses has been asked to identify him. That is very unusual. No lawyer, no good lawyer, asks a witness a question they don't already know the answer to, which leads me to believe that the prosecutor could not be sure that their eyewitnesses would be able to point to the defendant, Richard Allen, and say, oh, yeah, that's the guy I saw on the bridge. That's the guy I saw walking down the street who was bloody and muddy. In fact, one of those witnesses, the bloody and muddy witness, got very hostile on the stand, apparently, from what I hear. I've seen that video. That video could be a lot of people. That voice could belong to a lot of people. Another burning question that I've had this whole time, Richard Allen is 5'4". He's 5'4". The prosecution did not spend the $10,000 that it would have taken to estimate the height of bridge guy because they didn't think it would really matter, because there could have been a 2-inch discrepancy. They've already spent over $4 million prosecuting this case. Blame it on the guy. They didn't think narrowing down the height was important, or they were afraid of what it might show. He's 5'4". We're also covering, and I'm covering in person many times when I can get there, the prosecution of Rex Heuermann, the Long Island serial killer, who is somewhere between 6'4" and 6. I think he's around 6'6". 5'4" and 6'6" rules out a whole lot of the population. Why wouldn't they spend the 10 grand? And I submit to you that's probably an overestimate, to estimate the height of this guy on the bridge. It just strains credulity. Just strains credulity. Abby and Libby's justice wasn't worth 10 grand to them. Telling. Rex Heuermann is an ogre. That's how he was described, right? That's the way he was described all the way back in like 2010, 2011, when they got the first description of Rex Heuermann. They said he was between 6'4" and 6'6". He was an ogre. He had bushy hair, big glasses, and he was driving a first-generation green Chevy Avalanche. And that tip was buried in the file until 2023, when a female state trooper pulled it out, did a quick search, cross-checked all the green Chevy Avalanches with registrations of men who were 6'4" to 6'6", and they zeroed in on Rex Heuermann like almost immediately. Like, this is insane to me that they never even bothered to figure out or estimate the height of this bridge guy. And quite frankly, who's to say that bridge guy even did anything to the girls? We don't even know that. Like, make that connection for me. People who were in the courtroom who heard the video and then the enhanced video where this bridge guy says down the hill. I from my understanding, you can't even see his lips move. You don't even know if that's really him saying that. I don't even really know. But it could be anybody. Somebody did say that and I think it was Andrea, who said that it did look like, from the angle that the video was taken, that it was taken surreptitiously, that the girls were not just videotaping him like out in the open, that it was. So I don't know, but it feels like a whole different level of circumstantial evidence, says Marissa. That's what it feels like to me. And yes, Sunny pointing out, bridge guy's not the one saying down the hill because his mouth isn't moving when you hear the words. Yeah. I mean, all a jury needs is reasonable doubt. It's a 12-person jury in Indiana, unlike the 6-person juries that we also often see in Florida. Yeah. Chair pants all day. I love that. Jury Duty, Amazon Prime. If you haven't watched it, amazing series, hilarious, so funny. First red flag is when the local or state police ask the FBI to rescind their investigation. Back to the document. 6, most of the evidence backing these assertions was found scattered over no less than 10 hard drives and several flash drives provided by the prosecution, meaning that the defense is not making wild accusations, but rather primarily relaying facts and information that is backed up by the prosecutor's own discovery, even discovery that the prosecution just provided to the defense as late as September 8th of 2023. 7. Not coincidentally, members, Odinists of this same pagan cult are employed, wait for it, as corrections officers for the Indiana Department of Corrections at Westville Correctional Facility. It is inside of the cold concrete walls of the maximum security unit of this dilapidated reformatory, in quotes, that Richard Allen is being threatened, intimidated, and mentally abused. Footnote 7. Defense counsel is not saying that the Westville guards were involved in the murders, only that they were likely involved in threatening, intimidating, and mentally abusing Richard Allen. 8. Throughout this document, references are made to the Unified Command. Essentially, the Unified Command was the leadership of the Delphi murder investigation, according to Tony Liggett, Carroll County Sheriff and member of the Unified Command when the investigation began. I just need to stop and take some notes because we're gonna need a chart. All right, so Tony Liggett is the Carroll County Sheriff, or was when the investigation began. Unified Command consisted of law enforcement from a variety of entities, local, state, and federal. Unified Command were overseers of the entire investigative operation. According to Liggett, members of the Unified Command are/were from Carroll County, Tony Liggett and Kevin Hammond; from State Police, Jerry Holman, Jay Harper, and Dave Vito; from the FBI, Rich Davies. Next section. Odinism, Odinites, and runes. Runes. I'm going to go to the chat for a second. Kay, thank you for tuning in from Canada. Canada's in the house. Also, Indiana allows pre-deliberation jury discussion of the evidence as long as all jurors and alternates are present. That's interesting. Also, of note, the jury in this case is being sequestered there in a hotel with no electronics for the pendency of this trial. They've been bussed in from 2 hours away, and they're in a hotel. And that's part of the reason they're doing court on Saturdays, so they can maximize their time while they are being sequestered. Thanks, Kay. Hi, Mike. Mike Dorado. I've become a big fan of Defense Diaries after watching you on with Allie. I really enjoy your collabs. Thank you. Thank you so much. They're amazing. Love Bob and Allie. Okay, Odinism, Odinites, and runes. Odinism is the pagan religion referenced above, and its followers are called Odinites. Odinists are enamored of Viking/Nordic culture. Evidence supports that at the crime scene, these murdering Odinites left behind obvious signatures, symbols in the form of runes. Footnote 9. We missed footnote 8. Where was footnote 8? Okay, from the FBI. Rich Davies is footnote 8. Although State Police Superintendent Doug Carter pulled the plug and kicked the FBI off the Delphi murder case around 2021 over some conflicts, according to Jerry Holman. Remember, Holman is the proctor. Holman is with the Indiana State Police. So the FBI was kicked out in 2021. Here on Long Island, the FBI was never allowed in because of the corruption going on inside Suffolk County, including the cover-up by former police chief Jimmy Burke, who spent time in prison, and our DA at the time, Tom Spoda, who is still currently sitting in Club Fed, which is known as federal prison. So it can happen. I'm here to tell you that from firsthand experience. Can happen, does happen, will happen again. Not all cops are bad. Just like not all priests are bad. Not all doctors are bad. Not all lawyers are bad. Nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop. Interestingly, we're still on footnote 8. Tony Liggett, who was deposed before Holman, claimed under oath that Doug Carter was not involved in making decisions for the case. Furthermore, Liggett claimed to be unaware that the FBI was even kicked out, let alone that any agency had actually kicked out the FBI from investigating the Delphi case. It's quite odd that the salient topic of Doug Carter kicking the FBI off the Delphi case would never have been discussed between Liggett and Holman, who were working so closely with one another in unified command. If that can be believed, it would be quite perplexing. And footnote 9, which is after runes, says, Merriam-Webster defines a rune as any of the characters of any of several alphabets used by the Germanic peoples from about the 3rd to the 13th centuries. These runes were 1, formed with sticks, 2, fashioned with tree branches, and 3, painted using the blood of Liberty German. Sticks and tree branches were deliberately, carefully, and proficiently placed on each girl in a certain arrangement mimicking certain runes. At least one of the branches appeared to have its end cut off cleanly by some type of tool, like an electric saw, providing proof of a preconceived plan. Additionally, the blood of Liberty German was used as the paint to mark a tree with a rune that looks similar to the letter F. Footnote 10. Many runes look like the letter F, including a rune called Ansuz, which, among other things, stands for Odin. With a simple Google search, these runes would be identifiable as one of the many calling cards of this pagan religious cult. Yet, law enforcement in charge of the Delphi investigation seemingly and quickly abandoned the obvious correlation between the crime scene and Odinism, despite an obscene amount of evidence linking Odinism to the crime scene. And even in spite of powerful evidence linking specific Odinites in and around Indiana to the murders. Also, the court will learn in his affidavit for search warrant that Sheriff Liggett failed to inform Judge Diener that nothing, absolutely nothing, links Richard Allen to Odinism or any religious cult. Footnote 11. Liggett deposition, page 80, lines 14 to 23. Also, no forensics such as DNA, no electronic data extracted from his computers or phones or from his social media links Richard Allen to the crime scene. Additionally, nothing links Richard Allen to any of the Odinite suspects, the same Odinite suspects that evidence strongly supports sacrificed Abby and Libby in some sort of pagan ritual. Richard Allen had nothing to do with this crime, but rather as an innocent man, a patsy for the police, arrested 26 days before an election. Breaking from the document to say that many people believe that is why Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon has decided that he would like to resentence the Menendez brothers. All right. Shell says this case is so much worse than I ever imagined. Those poor girls, their families, JC. What the duck? Stace on the case. There are a lot of law enforcement early on that have just been left out of this case because they disagree. Grey Witch. If you know, you know. Some may find it unbelievable. Next section, failure to pursue the Odinist links. Law enforcement's failure to actively pursue the obvious links between the crime scene and Odinism is confounding. It is even more confounding when days and weeks after the murders, a particular Odinite from Logansport named Brad Holder posted on social media images mimicking the very runes found at the crime scene. A crime scene unreleased and unknown to the general public even to this day. Well, not anymore, because the jury, the gallery, has been shown crime scene photos, a lot of them, graphic ones. Who was Brad Holder? He was an Odinite whose son Logan had been dating Abby. Brad Holder's social media posts seemingly taunted the very police that refused to fully investigate him. The defense believes that the court will be shocked at the number of clues or Easter eggs, both before and after the murders, that Holder openly posted on his Facebook page that pointed the finger to his involvement in the murders. However, a fact that is simply mind-blowing to the defense is that Brad Holder was never considered a suspect in the murders of Abby and Libby. State Trooper Jerry Holman, one of the law enforcement officers in charge of organizing and investigating the Delphi murders, claimed in his August 10th of 2023 deposition that Brad Holder was not really ever a suspect. Footnote 12. Holman deposition, page 172, lines 4 and 5. Police reports written near the time of the murders reveal that Jerry Holman is telling the truth. Brad Holder was cleared as a suspect quickly on March 16th of 2017. Remember, the girls were found on February 14th, 2017. So this is almost exactly a month later. Brad Holder cleared. On March 1 of 2017, Tony Leggett stated in a report that there were no leads required concerning Brad Holder, meaning that it was not necessary for law enforcement to continue to look for leads related to Brad Holder. Leggett made that determination a mere 15 days after the girls were murdered. By March 16th of 2023, Unified Command member Kevin Hammond wrote that, quote, Brad Holder has been cleared, end quote. The girls hadn't been dead for 30 days and Unified Command had already cleared Brad Holder as a suspect. Unified Command had already cleared Holder as a suspect within 30 days, knowing that Brad Holder's son dated Abby. Unified Command had already cleared Holder as a suspect within 30 days of the murders, although a simple review of Brad Holder's Facebook page would show that he, Brad Holder, was a proud Odinite that had an absolute obsession and fascination with runes. Police knew or had to know that runes had been left at the crime scene. Additionally, Unified Commander had already cleared Holder as a suspect, in spite of the fact that runes found on Brad Holder's Facebook pages mimicked runes found at the crime scene that had not been released to the public. The investigation had barely begun, but the Unified Command had already cleared the very man that any person with even a small amount of common sense or curiosity would believe was a strong candidate for being involved in the murder of the girls. Yeah. Patty can't even muster more than a wow. Perplexed says Brad Holder's picture lines up identically to Bridge Guy. Melanie Parker says Brad Holder is the Bridge Guy. Michael wants to know if Brad Holder had an airtight alibi. So what we're learning here from the September of 2023 motion is that there are potential third-party culprits, right? Very, again, similar to the Karen Read case. I'm just, the similarity, there are a lot of similarities, a lot of differences, but again, defense wants to use a third-party culprit theory here. The judge is not allowing it. Right? Karen Read's case, eventually, some of it was allowed in. Defense was allowed to argue it in the end. Trials are living, breathing things, so rulings can change. Oh, thank you, Sarah and Shaganahara, who's not only an amazing moderator, but a very, very generous contributor and benefactor to this channel. So welcome to the 10 new members who were randomly chosen by YouTube to become new members. I hope you like it here. Thank you, Sarah. What I'm gleaning from this motion is that there are potential suspects that may have had more of a connection or a nexus to the girls and to the ritualistic way that perhaps the crime scene could be interpreted, that were quickly discarded until 5 years later when they decided to arrest Richard Allen, a guy who worked at CVS for years, who came in willingly to say he was at the bridge that day around this time. Would a person who murdered 2 girls do that? I don't know. I don't know that they'd come in and volunteer that they were there that day. What can I do to help kind of thing? It's important to note that during the interrogations that Holman testified about the other day, during the interrogation of Richard Allen, he threatened Allen's wife and daughter. Who knows what Richard Allen was threatened with while he was in solitary confinement for 18 months in the prison? Who knows? He was in there. His wife and daughter were out there. He couldn't protect them from in there. Who knows? I'm interested to see what these confessions are going to say, what they're going to play the tapes, I guess. I believe the video of this interrogation. I believe the video of this interrogation of Richard Allen is going to come in, right? Wasn't the prosecution trying to keep out the video of the interrogation? Because apparently during the second interrogation, he was not Mirandized on camera. That portion of the videotape is mysteriously missing. And Holman threatened his wife and daughter, right? Dustin, thank you. Did the murder happen on Wednesday or Odin's Day? Well, the girls went missing on the 13th. Their bodies were found on the 14th. Prosecution wants us to believe the murders happened on the 13th, shortly after, within something like a 1-hour period of the last of when the girls may have gone down the hill. Within 1 hour, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys. Many people think the girls were taken to another location for a period of time and then brought back to the location, and maybe the murders happened on the 14th. There's also been evidence that I think there's been evidence that they were missing a lot of blood. May have been some bloodletting involved here. One of the girls was dressed, one of the girls was nude. One of the girls' cell phones was extracted, one of the girls' cell phones was not extracted. Huh. The girl whose phone was extracted, and I don't want to misspeak, so tell me which girl's phone was extracted, Abby's or Libby's. The bridge guy's video, Snapchat video, was found on Libby's phone. The phone stopped moving at something like 2 in the afternoon, and then all of a sudden, I think it went into slow mode or battery saver mode or some mode, and then at 4 a.m., all of a sudden, text messages started coming in. Abby didn't have a phone, or she didn't have a phone with her. She didn't have a cell phone. Did she have social media? Did they scour her social media? Did they extract her laptop? Did they extract her iPad? Did they look for any other clues about why they were there, who they may have been meeting with? She was using a tablet. Did they ever extract her tablet? I don't think so. Right. Abby was dressed in Libby's clothes. Grey Witch says one was bled out, no blood at scene, only on the body. They were not killed at the site where they were found, in my opinion, says Grey Witch. Yep, the phone was found underneath one of them. Don't Be Hatin' says they didn't look at Libby's sister's phone either. And Libby was supposed to meet K1lling, who is currently incarcerated, right? Kim says they were both nude at some point, right? But they weren't both found nude, right? And Abby was made to get dressed in Libby's clothing. There's proof that they both had dirt on their backside. They ignored all of Abby's social media. Ignored or didn't even look for. Who dis? So why? Okay. A lot of people are pointing out Abby didn't have a cell phone. She used Libby's. Okay, good. Sarah says Liberty's phone was extracted. They shared Libby's phone, and I don't trust anything law enforcement say at this stage. They both had fingerprint access to the one phone. But again, they could only use it when they were together, right? I'm just wondering if they extracted any other information from Abby, from her tablet, from her iPad, whatever it was. Polly Claire, famous UK car Huntley helped search two 10-year-old girls. I don't know what you're saying. So the answer is, I don't know what day of the week. I'm sure easy Google search will tell you February 13th or February 14th. Back to the document. For example, the court will also learn that the Unified Command was aware of a very disturbing image. Wait, did I just read that part? No. For example, the court will also learn that the Unified Command was aware of a very disturbing image on Brad Holder's social media accounts that actually mimicked the crime scene. On April 12th of 2017, Trooper Josh Ryan Winters received a phone call from a man in Georgia named Ryan Boucher, who had discovered disturbing images in Brad Holder's social media account. Boucher began reviewing Brad Holder's social media history. Is this an armchair detective? The public is sometimes at such great help in cases like this. I mean, look at Recovery Addict in the Ferris trial or the Ferris trial. He may have he may have figured out or got the witness to come forward about the murder weapon, where the gun was. I don't know. But I know you guys at home do a lot of armchair detective work. So props to you. One of the images Boucher reviewed on Brad Holder's social media account was an image of two women, either dead or posed as if they were dead, on the ground in what appeared to be a forest. Both women had tree limbs and sticks arranged on their bodies. One of the women had her arms stretched out above her head, similar to the way that Libby's arm was stretched above her head. All right. start again, back to one. One of the women had her arm stretched out above her head, similar to the way that Libby's arm was stretched above her head. Both women were clothed, and the stick and tree branch formations on these girls was different than the stick and tree branch formations on Abby and Libby, but otherwise it bore a very eerily similarity to the murder scene in Delphi. Ryan Boucher had no knowledge of the actual crime scene. Well, nobody did because those photos were sealed. Nobody knew what they looked like. However, after reviewing Brad Holder's social media sites, Boucher was disturbed at that image, as well as other images that provided insight into Brad Holder's fascination with runes. Believing that the disturbing images may be something of interest to those investigating the Delphi murders, Mr. Boucher contacted Toby Lazenby, who at the time was the sheriff of Carroll County. Lazenby quickly rebuffed Boucher, telling Boucher that Holder was not a suspect. Undeterred, Mr. Boucher contacted the state police, where he ended up talking to Trooper Joseph Ryan Winters. After their conversation, Winters memorialized the interaction and placed the images provided by Boucher into a Dropbox account. After creating the report, Winters then discussed his findings face-to-face with Jerry Holman of Unified Command. The body of this memorandum will provide details of that interaction. In his report, Winters requested law enforcement to re-interview Brad Holder. The defense does not believe Unified Command ever followed up on Winters' request. It should be noted that the disturbing images found by Boucher in Georgia and placed in a Dropbox by Winters were not, and still have not, been provided to the defense. In his recent deposition, Winters said that he had attempted to locate the images but was unable. However, because of the potential importance of those images to Richard Allen's case, the defense team located Boucher and then traveled to Georgia to meet with him. Those images are now in the possession of Richard's defense team, who then provided those images to law enforcement. Again, these were important images that law enforcement failed to turn over to the defense. Instead, the defense located these images in Georgia and then turned them over to the very people who had the obligation to provide them to the defense. So evidence just goes missing, things reveal themselves, and sometimes things just disappear. Unified Command, which included Tony Liggett, who drafted the affidavit for search warrant, was fully aware of the mimicked crime scene on Brad Holder's social media, as well as other posts that mimicked the exact runes found at the crime scene, but failed to do anything about it and failed to inform Judge Diener of this obvious suspect, Brad Holder, and all of the evidence that existed against Holder, making him a prime suspect. Is that the judge that recused himself from this case? Who just wanted off of this case before Judge Gull? I think so. Let me know if you know. The court will learn in the body of this memorandum that Holder was connected to the crimes. Everybody says, yep, yep, yep. And was it because his family was threatened or something? He wanted off the case due to the bloodlust? Yes. Mm-hmm. Bloodlust judge. Yeah, they did not Mirandize Richard Allen. That part of the video glitched, or it just wasn't working, it wasn't turned on. The court will learn in the body of this memorandum that Holder was connected to the crimes, the crime scene, and to other men who had confessed to the crime. The evidence of those connections will be provided in the body of the memorandum, including copies of the images found on Holder's Facebook page at the time of the investigation, which link Holder to the crime scene, as well as the images found by Ryan Boucher, that law enforcement has failed to turn over to the defense. Travis says, did Holder have a .40 caliber 6 Sauer that could not be excluded, or was that someone else? I don't know. Did they look? Did they even look? The defense will also attach what the defense calls the Winters report, which is the memorialization of Trooper Winters' interaction with Ryan Boucher. Liggett provided none of this evidence or information to Judge Diener, but rather allowed Judge Diener to believe that Richard Allen was a lone suspect in the murders, in spite of zero evidence linking Richard Allen to the crimes at the time Liggett sought the search warrant 26 days before an election. Unified Command's failure to vigorously pursue the obvious links between the crime scene and Odinism is even more perplexing when evidence known to law enforcement demonstrated a clear nexus between Brad Holder and at least 4 other suspects. Elvis Fields from Rushville, Patrick Westfall from Delphi, Johnny Messer from Rushville, and Rod Abrams from Rushville, now living in Connorsville. And remember, this was drafted September of 2023, almost a little over 1 year ago. So I don't know where these people live now. This is still geographically accurate. Unified Command was aware that Elvis Fields confessed to his sister that he, Elvis, was involved in the murders, even providing to his sister intimate crime scene details of which only those present at the crime scene would have familiarity. Additionally, Elvis Fields told his sister, Mary, on February 14th of 2017 that he was present at the killings and that he, Elvis, now had a brother and now was part of, quote, a gang. So the way that this is written, I don't know if he told her on February 14th of 2017, that's when he told her, or he told her that on February 14, 2017, that he was present. It's not clear. In February of 2018, Elvis had been questioned by law enforcement, but denied involvement of the murders. However, after being dropped off at his trailer following the questioning, Elvis turned around, walked back to the police car, and, according to the police report, asked the state trooper if his spit is found on one of the girls, but he could explain it away, would he still be in trouble? Okay, so Elvis is the spit guy. And in the police report, 1 year later, February of 2018, that's when he was questioned. In the police report, it is noted that he said to the police officer, or the trooper, the state trooper, was a statey, if my spit is found on one of the girls, but I could explain it away, would I still be in trouble? The state trooper that heard Elvis utter these words, Kevin Murphy, was not part of the Unified Command, but immediately relayed Elvis's disturbing question to Jay Harper of Unified Command. Elvis also admitted to a different sister, Joyce, that he had in fact spit on one of the girls. Elvis told Joyce that he, Elvis, was on a trail and a bridge with 2 girls that were killed and that he was going away for a long time. Okay. How many of you did not know all of this information before we started reading these court documents? Show of hands. How many people in the chat? Give me a 1 in the chat if you have never heard of these details. Give me a 2 in the chat if you knew all about this. Just curious. Okay, so the people who are putting 1s in the chat didn't know any of this stuff. What the duck? Shotgun Susie said, what the duck? What the duck? Sarah's very new to following this case. I know, Sarah, we've been wrapped up. We've been wrapped up in Karen Reed for a long time. to know that there are other cases in other states that may have just as much, if not more, shenanigans, tomfoolery, and ballyhoo. What the duck? Okay, so we're kind of split. So there's a lot of people who never heard this stuff before, and a lot of people who have heard this stuff before. What? Heavy Metal Rehab, who is very familiar seemingly with this case based on comments today, says Officer Stephanie Thompson gave Elvis's sister a polygraph. Stephanie and her daughter passed in a house fire, arson. The officer who gave Elvis's sister a polygraph died in a house fire. That was ruled arson, or you think it's arson? So she can't authenticate the polygraph. Coincidence? So many of you did know about all of this stuff, but none of this stuff is, the jury's not going to know about any of it unless she changes her ruling. Kenny's like, I'm just voting 3. I'm just voting 3 for the hell of it. Kelly's like, I don't know any of this, and I live in Indiana. A lot of these documents were sealed for a very long time. There's been a gag order on this case on and off. So these documents were sealed. Right, Richard. I don't know if it's in these papers, but there was a girl that also confessed to being involved in these, right? And they deemed her crazy, and she wasn't taken seriously. But now it's been discovered during the trial, I believe, that there was a hair wrapped around one of the girl's hands that was never tested for DNA because I don't know if it was Holman who testified to this, that they assumed that the hair belonged to one of the family members of the girls, and therefore they did not test that hair for DNA. Right? You can't make this up. You cannot make this up. She, meaning the girl, also said she was jumped into a gang. And this is the girl who, the confession around the world says, Gull won't change her ruling. Her bias is even worse than Bev. True Crime with Eve says, I hear false confessions happen quite often in high profile cases. That's wild. Well, even what's not so surprising is that he didn't confess, Richard Allen, 60 times or however many times they're saying that he confessed, until he had been held in solitary confinement for many, 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 many months in a prison, guarded by one guard or 2 guards who may or may not have been wearing Odinism patches on their uniforms. So that's interesting to me. Is it possible that somebody was threatening his family? If you just don't confess to this, something's going to happen to your wife and daughter. Holman testified that he brought his wife and daughter into brought up the subject of his wife and daughter during that interrogation or interview where he wasn't Mirandized, but it was videotaped. So it's going to be interesting to see the reaction by the gallery when they show that interrogation tape. It's much different. Yeah, he was adamant of his innocence prior to the arrest. It's much different to read a transcript in court than it is to. Hold on, somebody said something about Bob. Oh, Bob tweeted that an Indiana State Police forensic scientist testified this morning. It was noted that the hair was tested and it connects to Kelsey, the sister. Oh, he said that? All right, well, then we don't have to talk about that anymore. If they did test it, but I think they tested it like during trial, right? Like wasn't never tested before. Let me pull that up for myself so I can read it to you. They're not allowed to have their cell phones in court. And so whatever tweeting they do has to be done like on their break, And if they are one of the people who is public, a member of the public, they can't even leave to have lunch because they can only eat in line. Otherwise, there's no like seat reserved when you leave the courtroom. All right. So here's what Bob tweeted about almost 2 hours ago. The state called Stacy Bozanovsky to the stand this morning. She's a forensic scientist with the Indiana State Police Lab, specifically DNA. The two most interesting results was a hair found on Abby's pinky was determined by Bozanovsky to be consistent with Kelsey German as she submitted a sample for standard in late September. The unspent cartridge was swabbed and no DNA profile could be developed. Bozanovsky visibly examined the casing for latent prints and saw none. No fingerprints or DNA on the cartridge, so that's interesting. And the hair was determined to be consistent with Libby's sister, Kelsey. When did they do the testing? He didn't say. But I think it was just recently because I think it had not been tested up until the time of trial, right? Okay. And back to the document. Thank you for sharing that with me, Party of Five. Must have been within the last week. It wasn't tested at the start trial, says Chelsea Good. Okay, I'm not crazy. Raven Fairy Raven says we were told that Richard Allen's DNA was on the casing. Well, I guess it wasn't, according to their own witness, according to the state's own witness. Who works for the Indiana State Police Crime Lab. Elvis's alibi for February 13th of 2017 was also probably flawed. State troopers who weren't part of a unified command determined that Elvis's roommate concocted a story concerning Elvis's whereabouts on February 13th of 2017. The roommate is named Rod Abrams. Abrams told a story claiming that on February 13th of 2017 that he, Rod Abrams, Elvis Fields, and a man named Ned Smith were visiting a sick friend in Muncie. Unfortunately for Rod Abrams, this story conflicted with the story that Elvis Fields told law enforcement as to his whereabouts on February 13th of 2017. These shady alibis were relayed to Unified Command. These shady alibis will be further explained in the body of the memorandum. Furthermore, Unified Command knew that on February 1st of 2018, Elvis's sister passed a polygraph examination when asked if she were telling the truth about what Elvis had confessed to her. Unified Command's failure to vigorously pursue the obvious links between the crime scene and Odinism is even more inexplicable when evidence known to law enforcement included information about another Odinite named Patrick Westfall, who was living in Delphi, very close to the murder scene, on February 13th of 2017. Evidence known to Unified Command included the fact that fellow Odinites, Patrick Westfall and Brad Holder, were close friends as late as January 21 of 2017. However, that friendship ended very abruptly in February of 2017. Things that make you go, The schism in their friendship resulted from a fight that occurred between Holder and Westfall in February 2017, where he, Holder, and Westfall were in the woods near a river conducting a ritual. One of them said or did something the other did not agree with, and they no longer talked to each other. The river was near Patrick's house. An intoxicated Brad Holder shared this disturbing information with his ex-wife, Amber Holder. Amber Holder then relayed this disturbing information to law enforcement who were not part of Unified Command in 2019. These officers then relayed this disturbing information to Unified Command. Liggett concealed this information from Judge Diener. In 2019, Unified Command learned that in a totally different conversation with his ex-wife, Brad Holder pointed the finger away from himself and directly at Patrick Westfall as being the person actually responsible for the murders of Abby and Libby. According to the police reports, Brad Holder told his ex-wife, Amber Holder, that Westfall and his people killed Abigail Williams and Liberty German because one of their mothers was mixing with other people outside the mother's race. Seemed that I stopped highlighting at some part here. This is all in police reports and real documents. This is not stuff that the defense is just pulling out of thin air. Furthermore, Unified Command was aware that Brad Holder had told Amber that, quote, "I can only protect you so much if you keep asking questions," end quote. Brad Holder further told his ex-wife, Amber, that Patrick Westfall had many people backing him, Westfall, up, and that Westfall also had powerful friends. Liggett knew this information for more than 3 years before Liggett sought a search warrant for Richard Allen's house. Yet Liggett never shared that information with Judge Diener. Additionally, Westfall provided a very weak alibi as to his whereabouts on February 13th, 2017. Westfall told law enforcement that he, Westfall, was at home the afternoon of Monday, February 13th, 2017. The defense is unaware of any search warrant that Liggett sought to enter Westfall's house or whether Unified Command instructed law enforcement to knock on a single neighbor's door to verify Westfall's alibi. Unified Command's failure to continually pursue the obvious links between the crime scene and Odinism is even more disturbing when evidence known to law enforcement included information about another Odinite named Johnny Messer from Rushville. Johnny was a recruiter for the Odinites and was also the connective tissue between the Odinites from the Delphi area, Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, and the suspects from the Rushville area, Elvis Fields and Rod Abrams. Johnny's a recruiter. Delphi is located 126 miles from Rushville. Law enforcement knew that Johnny Messer was friends with Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall. Law enforcement also knew that Messer was acquaintances with Elvis Fields and Rod Abrams. Unified Command theoretically could claim, and actually appear to be claiming, that this connection is simply a bizarre coincidence. However, Unified Command not only knew that Elvis Fields / Rod Abrams and Brad Holder / Patrick Westfall shared a common acquaintance, Johnny Messer, but also that Elvis Fields and Brad Holder followed each other on Facebook and even mimicked each other's Facebook pages, with Elvis Fields actually recreating the photos that Holder posted on his Facebook page. Remember, Elvis is the one who said, "If I spit on one of the girls, but I could explain it away, would I be in trouble?" And his sister is the one who passed the polygraph. Shockingly, at his August 10th, 2023 deposition, Unified Command member Jerry Holman claimed that he did not even know who Johnny Messer was, nor what the evidence showed of Messer's possible role in the murders of Abby and Libby. It is additionally infuriating that Johnny Messer was cleared as a suspect in the murders when considering these facts. Johnny's ex-girlfriend, Taylor Hornaday, told police that Johnny Messer and Patrick Westfall were like brothers. She also told police that she had allowed Johnny to borrow her car on or around Valentine's Day of 2017, and that Johnny drove her car up there to hang out with his Vinlander friends. Footnote 13. Vinlander is a word interchangeable with those that practice Odinism. As State Trooper Roland Purdy stated in his deposition, all members of Vinlanders are also Odinists, according to the Purdy deposition. Basically, the Vinlanders are a white supremacist group consisting of Odinists. Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, and Johnny Messer were all affiliated with the Vinlander group. Johnny Messer's ex-girlfriend, Taylor Hornaday, also confirmed that all Vinlanders were also Odinists and that Johnny Messer, Brad Holder, and Patrick Westfall were all members of Vinlander. When he returned to her vehicle, it had dried blood over one side of it. Johnny Messer refused to discuss the details of how the blood got there. Johnny Messer's ex-girlfriend further stated that it took her several car washes to finally remove the blood. Meanwhile, Messer has claimed that he had never, not once in his life, been to Delphi, home of his, quote, brother, Patrick Westfall, and near the home of his other Odinite brother, Brad Holder. Messer's ex-girlfriend also told law enforcement that Brad Holder and Johnny Messer were two of the most violent people she knew and were fully capable of having been involved in the murders. Johnny Messer's ex-girlfriend further stated that a motive for their involvement in the murder of Abby and Libby might be the concept of blood in and blood out, which means social acceptance into their secret circles. All of this information was relayed to Liggett and the Unified Command team, yet Unified Command provided no guidance as to what to do to capitalize on this information in order to work towards solving the murders. Additionally, Unified Command learned that Johnny Messer's ex-girlfriend had been listening to and recording Johnny Messer's phone calls. Police secured the phone and listened to 3 phone calls involving Johnny Messer. In 2 of those phone calls, Messer was, quote, offering money to other people to find someone so they can be injured or killed. The 3rd call involves Messer bragging about holding a subject hostage and shooting them at his house. Okay, so the police listened to these phone calls where he was offering money to other people to find someone so they can be injured or killed. Two phone calls that said that. Okay. The coincidences are adding up a little bit. I mean, a little enough for reasonable doubt, right? Oh, but this stuff isn't coming in. Right. Essentially, Unified Command said nothing to see here regarding Johnny Messer and issued no search warrants for his home. None have been disclosed to the defense, nor did they attempt to utilize an age-old investigative tool referred to as interrogation to pursue the truth about the involvement of Johnny Messer, Brad Holder, or Patrick Westfall in these crimes. So none of them were interrogated by the police. Many more shocking facts concerning this so-called investigation will be revealed in the body of the memorandum. I don't know, Matt, how much more can we take? Let's go to the chat for a second. Heavy Metal Rehab said Gull hates the defense. They had to crowdfund money for their experts because Gull wouldn't pay them. Meanwhile, the prosecution's gotten $4 million so far. Angeline says they haven't proved to me that bridge guy is the murderer and not just a random person. Teresa says Brad Holder has a rune tattoo of what was on Abby. Party of Five says, these are the people that did this. How can we deny this? They are telling on themselves. They're self-snitching. They're self-snitching. It's what our friend Bruce Rivers, the criminal lawyer, calls it. Melisa says Indiana Odinism equals white nationalist cover story. Boss. For the purposes of public oversight, why are we not allowed to watch the trial? I do believe that it is unacceptable that there is not more access to the court proceedings. You're not alone. Many, many people feel that way. This girl's boyfriend returned her car to her with blood all over the side of it, and it took her several car washes to get it off. Right around the same time. I don't have a diagram. The sticks looked like runes. There's been some people tried to draw some like diagrams of the sticks. And we can look at some stuff. Andrea said the sticks looked placed and resembled the runes. Yeah, there are two tarot cards that are very similar. I'm going to show those to you. We'll break here. I'm just going to, where am I? Going to figure out where I am here in this document before we go back. All right, this is where we are right here. Oda Nights in Westville Correctional Facility. So let me show you something that Zelda shared with me a few moments ago. One second to pull them up. This is a tarot card called the Magician. You tell me, from what you know or have learned of the positioning of the girls' bodies, I think they were posed. That's my own personal opinion. This is another tarot card called the Hanged Man. What say you? Teresa says Brad Holder has those on his Facebook. Zelda Kelly says they were posed. That is how they were laying. Well, let me find something for you here. And remember, these are like artists' renderings of what they saw in court, because we're not allowed to see the exhibits. And Ali Mata, who is not a credentialed media, but she's a member of the public, who's an attorney from Defense Diaries, was in court one day, tried to go up after court to look at the exhibits, and she was thrown out by Judge Gull, who said, "You're not credentialed media." And she said, "No, but I'm a member of the public. Aren't these open to the public?" And the judge said, "No." So there's that. All right, I'm going to show you this too. This is a picture of Brad Holder because people were like, who's Brad Holder? Or what does Brad Holder look like, and does he look like Bridge Guy? Here's Brad Holder. Here's the stills of Bridge Guy. I mean, just for your own edification, perhaps. I don't know. Teresa said Brad Holder taunted people, joking about this too. Let me see if I can find a picture or an artist rendering of the girls, because I think I saved that for you as well. This is an artist rendering. The sticks were not collected. Compare that with this. It says my browser has lost connection. Can you guys still see me? Oh, come on, man. Okay, so you're comparing that. Positioning, just the positioning with this. And this is we're just opening up a discussion here. I'm not leading you to any conclusion. And then compare this with this. The sticks weren't collected. Sticks weren't tested. Andrea said she didn't see the antlers. Yeah, actually, on this rendering that I just showed you, I don't see any antlers really depicted in this rendering either. This is from someone who saw the crime scene photos in court. I mean, it's crazy to me. We've seen shenanigans before. We've seen shenanigans in the... Thank you, Zelda, for sending me those tarot cards. Interesting. Is it interesting? 3 weeks later, they went and got the sticks. Yeah, they threw them in a pile. Went and got them. Who even knows if they were the same sticks? But what the defense is saying is, okay, prosecution, you opened the door now to us allowing in some contradictory evidence because you had a witness come in and testify that the sticks were random, or the sticks were just put there to camouflage the bodies. So we're allowed to now provide an alternative theory. You opened the door. So now we should be allowed to present evidence of this in the interest of a fair trial. Will the judge allow it? Will the judge allow it? Somebody said there was blood on the sticks they left behind. Yeah. Freudian slip and fall over. I'm not one to believe conspiracies at all, but this is something else. Oh, good. Zelda, you're going to do a video on this? All right, guys, if you want to see Zelda's video, go subscribe to her channel. Shenanigans. Yep, Estrella. Judge isn't allowing duck for the defense. Nothing to see here. TTM Pelco Creation. Did you get to see the actual crime scene photos? Were you in court? Sorry, I don't see any particular symbolism. The antler twigs were on Abby, but they look just like any twigs to me. Did you see the actual crime scene photo? Because I haven't seen them. I don't know anybody that's seen them aside from people who were actually in the courtroom. So if you're in the courtroom, I'm curious. I believe that somebody said that Andrea also said she did not see antlers. Chrissy says, let me guess. Judge is going to say, yeah, no. Keelan says guilty. He looks like Bridge Guy. Okay, but doesn't this other guy look like Bridge Guy too? Doesn't Brad Holder also look like Bridge Guy? And I'm just asking. I'm just curious. I mean, aren't there other guys who could? The Bridge Guy, the video is very blurry. It's just, food for thought. This is Brad Holder. And this is Bridge Guy. I don't know. I mean, is it reasonable doubt? It would be if they were allowed to admit it into evidence, but it doesn't look like they're going to be able to. Yeah, it's like the judge has totally kneecapped the defense, right? From the people that I know who were in the courtroom, they said that video is really blurry. You really can't see who it is. I mean, it's really not discernible. It could be many people, right? I mean, I don't know. It's just food for thought. I think Brad had an alibi, but didn't we just go over his alibi that it was shaky, that he just said he was at home? He was at home, nothing to see here kind of thing? Everyone looks like Bridge Guy except Richard Allen. They didn't even want to spend the money to find out how tall Bridge Guy was. Right? How many guys have that same jacket? Yeah, and again, also Serendipity says there have been like 15 guys named as Bridge Guy throughout this case, but I even doubt Bridge Guy's involvement, right? Is there any evidence that Bridge Guy even did anything to these girls? Even for sake of argument, if Richard Allen is Bridge Guy, was there any evidence that it is Bridge Guy who did anything? I don't know. But they didn't say how tall he was. Time bender. Again, Richard Allen is 5'4". The state didn't want to spend the money to get the analysis done to figure out how tall Bridge Guy was. So in the beginning, they said Bridge Guy is somewhere between 5'6" and 5'10". I don't know. They never checked Brad's alibi. I don't know. PG Miller is chiming in. The Hangman and Tarot is about gaining knowledge. Okay. Hello, he confessed after he was in jail in prison in solitary confinement for how long? Which can make anybody crazy. Was his family threatened? I can't wait for them to report back on these confession tapes. There are such things as false confessions. I'm just saying. Hello. I'm just saying. James says the Bridge Guy is taller than 5'4". He's definitely tall. Letteros by Betteros says there's no proof guy on the bridge was even involved. Why no defensive wounds? How does that happen? Oh, you mean to Richard Allen? Well, they didn't arrest him until 5 years later. Or do you mean to the girls? I don't know what you mean. 78 interviews were lost. Just lost. Perplexed says bridge guy was 5'10". There is a mathematical equation I found on Reddit. Okay, well, I mean, let's speculate, but that's just an opinion. We can't go to Reddit for truth and accuracy. We like to stick to facts, but the facts are the state did not spend the 10 grand to figure out how tall bridge guy was. Right? Is that even bridge guy's voice? We don't know. People who saw the video said the lips weren't moving, but again, it was blurry and you couldn't really see it. He kidnapped them on video. There's video of the actual kidnapping. I didn't hear about that. Snarky Sass Angel, the frame against Richard Allen is evident alone in just the way people in Delphi slide into slots from mayor to deputy prosecutor, all Freemasons, including law enforcement. Amy says Brad Holder knew one of the girls, therefore it'd be easier to get the girls to do what he wanted at first. He was Abby's boyfriend's dad, and he was cleared within, I don't know, a couple of weeks of the investigation. Please show depiction of Abby again, clearly antlers. Oh, here, this one, you're right. Okay, sorry. Let's go back to this. Above her head, see these twigs here? Yes, we did report that the DNA matched Kelsey's hair, the hair that was found on Abby's hand. Thank you for that, Melon. He confessed under duress, under torture. Who knows what they were doing to him in there? Right? He lost 40 pounds in the first couple of months of his incarceration. I mean, just saying. Something to keep in mind when we listen to these confessions, or when they listen to them and then report back to us. That's all I'm saying. All right, let's get back to the document. And now we're going to start talking about the prison guards who were guarding Richard Allen. Odinites in Westville Correctional Facility guarding Richard Allen. The evidence shows that during his pretrial incarceration at Westville Correctional Facility, Richard Allen has been monitored, intimidated, and mentally abused by correctional officers who are also members of the Odinite cult. Two of these correctional officers are named Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones. These Westville Corrections officers boldly wore patches on their Department of Corrections uniforms that proclaimed, "In Odin we trust," along with another patch displaying symbols of Odinism. I think that should say Odinism. Interlocking triangles. Both Odinite correctional officers, Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones, also display images of runes and/or other Odinite symbols on their Facebook pages. As recently as June 25th, 2023, for example, Odinite Sergeant Robinson openly displayed a photograph of his Odinite altar on his Facebook page. A similar altar can be found on the Facebook page of Brad Holder. Beginning at least on April 3rd of 2023, Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Robinson wore their Odin patches when the defense team visited Richard Allen. However, Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones's brazen display of their Odinite patches came to an end on August 17th of 2023. What changed? Why suddenly did they no longer display their Odinite patches beginning on the August 17th, 2023 visit between Richard Allen and his defense team? Here is your possible answer. It was not until an August 10th of 2023 deposition of Trooper Jerry Holman that Richard Allen's defense team finally revealed to the prosecutor and to Unified Command that for many months, they, Richard Allen's defense team, had been fully aware of the strong evidence linking Odinism to the murders. It was also at the August 10th, 2023 deposition that the Unified Command learned that Richard Allen's defense team was not only aware of this information, but also intended to expose the linkage of Abby and Libby's murders to Odinism and would also be revealing the names of the Odinists at trial. At that deposition, Holman and the prosecutor also learned that the defense team obviously intended on exposing the Unified Command's utter failure in pursuing the Odinist suspects in spite of the powerful evidence of Odinites' involvement in the murders. However, and this is important to note, at his August 10th, 2023 deposition, Richard's defense team did not let Holman or anyone else know that the defense team, was fully aware of the Odinite corrections officers at Westville wearing In Odin We Trust patches. Richard Allen's defense team's next visit with Richard Allen at Westville following the August 10th, 2023 deposition occurred 1 week later on August 17th of 2023. Curiously, or perhaps not so curiously, in those 7 days since the defense team revealed their knowledge that evidence linked Odinists to the murders, for the first time, Sergeant Robinson was no longer wearing his Odin patch. Footnote 14. Sergeant Jones was not present at this visit. It was almost as if someone had alerted Odinite Robinson that the gig was up because the lawyers knew about the links to Odinism, so lose the patch and pray that the defense attorneys never noticed the patches on prior visits. Unfortunately for Westville and Unified Command, Rick's defense team absolutely noticed the Odinite patches worn by Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones beginning April 3rd, 2023. Furthermore, Rick's defense team absolutely noticed the conspicuous absence of Sergeant Robinson's Odin patches following Trooper Holman's realization that Rick's defense team was fully aware of the connection between the murders and Odinism, as well as the failure of the Unified Command to follow through on the evidence that linked the murders to Odinism. The court will also learn in the body of this memorandum that Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Robinson were seemingly always by Richard Allen's side during most, if not every, visit. Normally, corrections officers, usually Sergeant Robinson or Sergeant Jones, were within earshot of every conversation between Richard and his attorneys and between Richard and his wife, close enough that Richard would have to be worried about any conversations with his attorneys and with his wife being overheard by Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones or other corrections officers. Beginning on April 3rd of 2023 and for several visits thereafter, the Westville correction officers even videotaped attorney visits between Richard and his defense team. That's it's against the rules. There's a thing called attorney-client privilege, and Your meetings with your attorneys are not supposed to be recorded or videotaped. Most of the time, if not every time, it was Sergeant Jones or Sergeant Robinson bringing the handheld camcorder to the visit. Corrections officers even required that Richard Allen be positioned facing the window where the corrections officer was videotaping the attorney visits with the handheld camcorder. This positioning of Richard Allen's body would allow the corrections officer to videotape Richard Allen's mouth as he talked to his attorneys. Richard would therefore not be able to privately discuss anything with his attorneys, such as, the guards are telling me that my wife and family will be killed unless I call my wife and tell her I killed those girls. Footnote 15. To be clear, up to this point, Richard Allen has never spoken these words to his attorneys. The point is that the Westville guards have made the privacy needed for Richard to have that type of conversation, private conversation, with his attorneys very difficult and perhaps not worth the risk if you are Richard Allen. And so these are just things that are in court papers that were filed in September of 2023, a little over exactly 1 year ago, that I think that we should keep in mind when we listen to these alleged confessions. Instead, a mentally defeated Richard Allen would continually mutter to his defense team at every visit these types of general questions. Is my wife alive? Is my family alive? Is my wife safe? Is my family safe? What does that indicate to you? At one such meeting with his attorneys, Richard Allen mumbled in a somewhat incoherent fashion that Odinites were threatening him. It would be important to know that Richard Allen's defense team had never mentioned the word Odinites or Odinism or informed Richard Allen that evidence suggests that Odinists murdered Abby and Libby until August 25th of 2023, when his defense team, in the presence of his wife, who was visiting with Rick in the prison, first discovered the exculpatory Odin-related evidence to Rick. Rick's defense team felt that having him remain unaware would hopefully keep Rick a bit safer. Due to Rick's weakened mental state and the concern that he might unwittingly discuss his attorney's strategy to Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Robinson, Rick's attorneys opted to not discuss Odinism with their client out of fear that Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones would then be on the alert that Richard's defense team was aware of the Odinite involvement. Richard's defense team needed additional time to investigate and review evidence before feeling confident and comfortable in revealing their knowledge to the court of the strong evidence that Odinites murdered the girls and that the Unified Command had chosen to do nothing about it, but in fact had hidden these facts from Judge Diener. Therefore, Richard's defense team opted to keep Richard in the dark about the Odinite connection to the murders supported by the evidence. Footnote 16. This decision, and here's the footnote. This decision has been painfully and emotionally difficult for Rick's defense team, as defense counsel recognized that while the defense took the necessary time to review the discovery to establish the Odinist links, both to the murders and to the Westville Correctional Facility, defense counsel was also aware that Rick would remain in his hellhole at Westville, subject to the cruelty of Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Robinson, and perhaps other Odinite corrections officers. This was especially painful at the June 15th, 2023 hearing to transport Rick to Cass County, as defense counsel knew at the time of the links between the murders and Odinism and Westville. Unfortunately, defense counsel needed additional time to fully understand and verify the facts before leveling such accusations. This is the reason that the defense tactically decided to keep its knowledge to itself rather than reveal that knowledge in open court at the hearing. Unified Command and the prosecution's hiding of exculpatory evidence is even more angering because difficult strategic decisions could have been avoided had McClelland offered the exculpatory documents sooner. Perhaps then Rick would have filed for speedy trial or would have been removed from Westville, as the defense would have been able to more fully inform the court about the facts of the case. Remember that date, June 15th, 2023. Again, more detailed information concerning the Odinite corrections officers, as well as the documentation supporting that information, will be provided in the body of this memorandum. Just going to put a pin in this because this is where we're leaving off right this second. I'm going to go to the chat, and then I'm going to show you. Dawn Burke says, another sacrifice. Barbara, thank you for your super sticker. Mark says, thanks for tuning in from Canada. Brad Holder's cap seems very similar to the cap in one of the artist's sketches. You're right. I agree with you. Thanks, Charlie Lynn, for gifting a membership. That's so sweet of you. Wendy DeBee, super disappointed that some of these guys claiming independent media are incredibly biased. It's blatant and it feels predatory. Cozy up with the victim's family and ignore the evidence. I don't know what you mean. I don't know who you're talking about, Wendy. Cozy up with the victim's family. Oh, I don't know. I don't know who those people are, Wendy, but I'm just here to read you the court documents and let you come to your own conclusion, because so many people, including the jury, is not going to hear probably about any of this. So all the way back, June 15th of 2023. And that was the hearing that we were just talking about to move Richard Allen from the prison back to the jail. I did a show with Duty Ron that day. Let me see if I can find it. All right. Give me 1 second. All right. So this was a show that Duty Ron and I did the day after that June 15th hearing. I'm going to play a little bit of it, and then I'm going to skip forward to a portion where Anthony from Tear Talk comes in and talks about solitary in a prison and what that's like. So let's take a listen to this.
Important to go live. So I did a basic overview of this hearing that was Thursday with Richard Allen. You know, a lot of people feel like they either got their guy or got the wrong guy. So we have, you know, it's the same situation that we have going on with Brian Kohlberger in the Idaho 4. You know, there's gag orders in place, Mel. There's the suppression of the probable cause affidavit. Heck, we don't even know how definitively how Libby and Abby were murdered.
We don't know the cause of death or the manner of death.
Right.
Yeah. So we at the time, we have since learned, this was all the way back after that hearing, I don't think that anyone knew that they were killed with a knife. They found that unspent cartridge bullet near the bodies, buried under some dirt, but there was no, we didn't know whether they were shot or not.
So I wanted to just play a little clip for some of the folks, and by a show of hands here in the chat, ongoing February 13th, 2017. So if you've been following this case, put a 1 in the chat. If we'll get into the confession, these 5 or 6 confessions allegedly that he has been throwing out. We're not sure if it was to the warden via a letter, to inmates, to prison guards, to friends and family, because he can get visitors. I verified and double checked that. His family can come visit him. His lawyers can come visit him. And I confirmed that before we went live. So, we don't know who he's saying this to, because everything is pretty vague. And we're just relying on sources.
A blanket statement in court that there were confessions made. We don't know who he made them to, how he made them, in what manner. We really don't know much, but we're going to get into it.
Yeah. So let's get this rolling so people can see what we're talking about and what this live interactive broadcast is going to be about. And again, hold your questions towards the end. If you have questions, hashtag Melanie, hashtag DutyRon. And when Anthony from Tier Talk, he's going to join us in the second half of it, put hashtag Anthony in the chat. He's going to talk about care and custody. He's a corrections expert and an executive in the corrections field. He's been on the channel many, many a time. So Anthony will be joining us at the 10 o'clock hour. All right, here we go, folks.
A trial date is now set for the suspect in the Delphi murders. The man accused of murdering Abby Williams and Libby German will face a jury in about 6.5 months. Richard Allen was in court for nearly 5 hours today.
And our news crews were in the courtroom all day as well. That includes 13 Investigates senior reporter Bob Siegel.
He begins our live team coverage tonight from Carroll County. Bob.
Well, we now know Richard Allen's trial date is set for January. Judge Fran Gall set jury selection for January 8th, 2024, and we are told to expect.
And it didn't start until October 2024. So remember, this is old.
3 weeks for the trial. Now, we also heard a bombshell in court today. Carroll County prosecutor Nick McLeland said that Richard Allen has made incriminating statements while he's being held in prison awaiting his trial. McLeland said Allen, and I quote, confessed 5 or 6 times to killing the girls. He didn't give any more details other than that. Allen's defense attorney told the judge the statements that were allegedly made by the defendant were generic. And he said, quote, the jury's going to hear all about that when the time is right. So the other big news that happened in court today is actually what did not happen in court. We expected the judge to hold a suppression hearing on whether to allow ballistics evidence in the case and whether that's going to be admissible. That did not happen. According to the state, they have tests that link an unfired bullet at the crime scene to a gun found in Allen's house. The defense wants the evidence thrown out, saying that it's based on questionable evidence. The judge announced that she is going to hold a hearing on that at a later date. We don't know that yet. So most of today's hearing focused on another very important issue, whether Richard Allen is going to remain in a maximum security state prison or move closer here to Carroll County. Samantha Johnson was in court sitting right next to me today. She heard all the testimony. And what we heard, well, first of all, it lasted hours. And it was fascinating.
It was fascinating. And as a reminder, this all comes about because the defense is saying right now that Allen's mental and physical health is deteriorating because he's in this maximum security unit. I've had the privilege of seeing Allen every time he's been in hearings yet this year. And we know, apparently, according to just the conditions that we've seen over the past few months, the words I wrote down to describe him today were weak and shallow feeling, also giving off a timid expression as well. But today we know that both sides agreed that this original safekeeping order that was filed in November of last year, we know that they say that was based on potential threats. The exact words they used were speculative safety concerns. And the sheriff at the time says he was being proactive by asking that Allen be moved out of Carroll County. Witnesses today testified, though, that there was no threat at the time, nor have there been any direct threats to Richard Allen. However, we did hear from the Westville warden today, who said said that he would be concerned for Richard Allen's safety if he were moved out of this maximum security unit. In fact, we know that we heard from another Westville worker today who said that in his 5 years of working at this prison, that Richard Allen is the only pre-trial inmate they've ever had in this segregation maximum security unit. So the defense today is arguing that this is all about equal protection. They told us in court today that their goal is really to come up with a solution to get better access to Allen to help him prepare for this defense. They even offered other options potentially to house Allen. We know Cass County was one of the counties being mentioned. We heard from their sheriff today. Hours of back and forth debate on this. And then, of course, Judge Gohl deciding that she was going to take both sides of this argument under advisement. No decision today, but of course, we do expect more in the coming days or coming weeks.
And a lot of what we heard in court today focused on Richard Allen's poor health.
Yeah.
And so we certainly want to explain more about that. And coming up at 5:30, we're going to explain why Richard Allen is now under video surveillance 24 hours a day. That came out in court today. That's coming up just in a little bit here at 5:30.
All right, before we let you go right now at 5, guys, obviously so many people are focused on this trial. We know it was a packed courtroom for people who wanted to see it in person today. Can you share who was there?
Yeah, the line was out the door early this morning. The first people in line to make sure they had a spot inside the courtroom arrived around 5:20. A lot of interest in this case, as you mentioned. We do know the families were there again today. We saw both the families of Abby and Libby. In fact, we saw more family members, I would say, than the last time we were here in Carroll County. It is important to mention we also saw family members of Richard Allen. So it was a full courtroom from what we're told. There were no empty seats available when we were in there earlier today. So a lot of emotion, of course, a lot of anticipation as to what comes next. And I know John Duran's going to walk through that coming up at 6 o'clock.
So there you have it, Mel. Melanie, there's a lot of.
Leanne, if somebody sends me a Zoom link to that, or if you can tell me who's streaming it. I did want to stream it, but I didn't get any information that it was going to be broadcast. So that is supposed to be at 2 o'clock. If anybody has it, please email it to me, fanbase@mlittlelaw.com, or tell me where I can stream it from. I'm going to move here to
Tier Talk,
where Anthony comes on and talks about the solitary confinement in a maximum security prison.
Anthony Ganji, he is. Listen, we got our next guest, Anthony Ganji. He is the founder of Tier Talk. He is a great friend of Crime Time with Duty Ron. He's a contributor. He's here on a professional level to give us the correction side of this. Anthony, thank you for joining us here tonight. Welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, guys? What's up, Duty Ron? Hello, Melanie.
Yeah.
What's up, sorry, almost said Tier Talk. What's up, Duty Ron audience? Love to see you guys.
Yes. So, Anthony, you've been listening for a little bit. I've been trying to go over this with our audience. Richard Allen in a maximum security state facility as a court order. If you could, briefly give an overview to the folks that are watching. How does this go? I mean, usually we ask Connie to roll through the intake part, but I know you know about all aspects of, the corrections. Can you just give the audience a little bit on this? I know you did a little research on your own.
Well, you were nice enough to send me some stuff too, so thank you. When someone comes into the system, obviously they're going to be evaluated by medical, mental health, and the determinations will be made based on what's provided to them from the person that's incarcerated, but also any other information that they deem is important, whether it's information coming from if he ever has gotten help from the outside or just stuff that they've figured. But with that said, once he went from county to state, I will tell you one thing: state is very prepared to take care of people for long term. That's why right off the bat, when they put him in solitary and all this other stuff, I understand that he's a pretrial. He's not an inmate, pretrial resident. I don't know what the terminology would be, but basically they need to protect that individual because, one, he can't be mixed in with individuals who have been sentenced. But two, he's high profile, so he could easily be a target. Also, the fact that he's on constant watch, I'm surprised he's able to even have visits with the legal team, because if his mental capacities in question, enough for him to be on a constant watch 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we usually don't allow them to have visits at that time because the person's just not mentally stable to do so. So you also have a bunch of lawyers that are talking to someone who's not mentally stable. Usually they would have to wait until mental health has either dropped the watch down to maybe a close watch, maybe something every 15 minutes, or ultimately maybe clear him from the watch. I think the other concern here too is that sometimes when you have someone that you feel could be suicidal, there is a process when it comes to bringing them down off the suicide watch, which would be it would go from a constant observation. So you got someone watching him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And by the way, that inmate program, the companion program, that's just a shortcut to save money on overtime and all this other stuff. It's not a good program. So I'm glad that they kind of are not doing that in this case here. Because again, when you have someone that's high profile, all eyes are watching your practices. They're watching how the facility is upkept. Either way, when the person starts to step down, the next process is after what you'd have, let's say, a constant watch and a close watch. The next process would be, if we're going to house him, maybe we could step down and house him with somebody, but they can't do that with this case here because, housing him with somebody could pose a threat to himself. Plus, he's not a sentenced individual, so there's nowhere where they can house him. So technically right now, I think the constant observation is because they have no way to bring him down and release him. So I thought
Constant observation. Think about that. Constant observation. If you're not, go over to Anthony Ganji's channel. It's called Tear Talk on YouTube. He's a really cool guy. He's got a lot of really great information, and give him a like and a thumbs up and tell him I sent you over there from this video that's like a year and a half old that we did together.
That was pretty unique that they're still doing some level of legal visits when you have someone that's mentally unstable. I've never worked in a prison. I've worked in 5 where when you have a person who's on constant watch, even if the lawyers try to visit him, or even if there's a court order, you will say at this time the person can't make it because right now they are under constant observation. We would have to wait for them to, work their way out of that before they're allowed to have any type of visits or even be sent out of the facility.
Right, but we're not so sure that he's at that point at this time, because he was produced in court 2 days ago. Anthony, I want to ask you about the potentials for drugs being administered to him if he's suicidal. What does the infirmary do? This is a state facility, right? So
yeah.
Prisoners that have mental health issues or suicidal thoughts, we know he's on suicide watch. Is he medicated? Does he have the potential to be medicated based on his evaluations through the psych?
Yeah, because you have psychiatrists who can prescribe, along with psychologists. In some states they can as well, but mostly it's the psychiatrist. I believe in Indiana, they don't have a force med protocol, which means that they have to go to the courts, where in some states, I think there's like 2, my state being one of them, where if the person does not want to be medicated, we do have a panel who can then vote. Usually it's led by the administrative team, but you also have a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and together as a team, we can decide if the person should remain on a force med protocol or not. But yes, inside the system, if need be, they can medicate him. But if he chooses not to be medicated, or the lawyers are fighting against that, then they would have to take it out into the court system, because Indiana does not have as I said, a force med protocol that's done with inside the facility. So at that point, they would have to go through the courts, and it would be psychotropic meds. Those are usually the medication that tends to fall under the force med protocol, because that's the medication that's utilized to calm the person down when they're going through some level of mental crisis. So it actually helps us when the person is going through a mental health crisis to be able to provide those medications just to kind of tone them down. But from my experience working in the system, I don't find that we are always going to medication, because it's also costly. So we work with our vendors to make sure that we exhaust all avenues before we start putting money towards whatever the psychotropic meds are that may be required.
Interesting. Well, Melanie and I will definitely have lots of questions for you, but I wanted to throw one that I know her and I will want answers to. What's your thoughts on how this guy has progressed from October of 2022 to Thursday when he was produced in court? You saw the clips that I was putting there, over 40-pound reduction, probably more than 40 pounds, and look is really frail. What's your thoughts on that? And how does the prison look at that? Do they monitor him? Everybody wants to know.
Well, first off, thanks for showing me that picture. That picture was definitely an extreme. Just in a matter of a couple of months, I believe he had decompensated. So I think it could also be situational. I mean, you know, there are always efforts to help somebody, but you can't force the horse to drink water. So, I mean, at the end of the day is, you know, we could be there trying to help the individual, and the individual just refuses to be helped. And I think that could be a point. I mean, if he's on suicide watch, there could be a thing where he wants to die, which means that, you know, he may be refusing the efforts from people to help him. I mean, and he could be strong-willed.
Here's the side-by-side comparison of when his arrest from October of 2022, which again was nearly 5 years post murders, and the way he appeared in June of 2023 when he was being brought into court. That's a scary decline, if you ask me. My initial thoughts on this was that he was on some sort of hunger strike. I'm going to ask Anthony about that in this clip. Or some sort of torture, some sort of like cruel and inhuman treatment. You know, let me know what you think and if you've ever seen these pictures before.
Willed in that manner. I mean, as you can see, look at the picture. That's what you sent me today. I mean, to be honest with you, you could have somebody who who is getting the help, but he just doesn't want to be on the other end of receiving it. And I know we mentioned a possible hunger strike. I don't think he's on one, because if he's on one, usually the protocol for a hunger strike is usually, it depends on the state, but for the most part, usually after you refuse 9 meals or 72 hours, within, you know, give or take, it depends on the facility or the policy. But once it's official and the hunger strike is running and he has a defined purpose, because there has to be a defined purpose or a declaration, they usually get put in the infirmary to be monitored. So at this point here, it says he's in like a dorm or something. I don't know if he's in the infirmary. So
he's in a pod. It says he's in the A pod.
Yeah, so I couldn't find out what A pod was. I don't know if that's just a mental health unit that, so guys, just to lay it out, guys. So there's, when you work in a state facility, and hopefully some of the jails too, there's going to be different areas in which an inmate's needs could be addressed, and you could have units that are designed for that. You could have infirmaries, which are really short-term care. You could have hospitals. Some facilities do have hospitals that could handle a lot, especially for inmates that require long-term care. But then you also have mental health units, like a treatment unit, which he probably won't be a part of that, because that involves also some interactions with GP inmates. But you also have a stabilization unit, which is usually a unit that is meant for people that are mentally decompensating. And then what happens here is they put them in a stabilization unit to try to stabilize them, but it's not a long-term unit. It's a unit that's meant to, you know, help the person go through the process, navigate through the impulses, limit their resources so they don't do anything foolish.
I don't mean to cut you off, but it appears that nothing's being done with this guy, because he looks like absolute shit.
Yeah, but you can't. Yeah, but the problem is this, though, if I may say so. We don't know if some of that is a choice that he's making, and we're very limited in how we can force somebody to take treatment or how we can force somebody to eat. We can't do that. I mean, that would be invasive. So having said that, all we can do at that point is monitor.
Feeding tube? You can't stick a feeding tube?
No, you can't do any of that. It's invasive. So what happens here is, believe it or not, it's a right to go on hunger strike. You cannot deny an inmate a right to go on hunger strike. But there's also a mental health component to that too. So having said that, the person starts deteriorating where they feel it's affecting his mental health and he can't properly make that decision, then you take the person probably to an outside hospital, and you kind of work with what you got to do to preserve the life. But in the meantime, you don't know if the guy is still, for some reason, he may not look great. But
Right.
if his vitals are good and everything's good and he's refusing to eat, we cannot force feed him.
So when you say that he has to declare, he has to say, I'm on a hunger strike. So if he just doesn't eat for 3 days, it's not considered a hunger strike, right? Is that what you're saying?
That's a great question, and I appreciate that. Melanie, is that okay? Can I call you Melanie?
Yeah, of course.
That's a great question. So usually for most states, it's going to be first they have to declare that they're on hunger strike, but there has to be a reason. Because it's a declaration that says I'm not eating because of these reasons. And then at that point, there's usually a certain amount of missed meals where, okay, the person's following through. And then what they'll do is they'll wind up sending them somewhere where they can be monitored for intake. Just because, again, you want to make sure that this person's not eating. Okay, if you're not eating, that's fine. It's been 72 hours safely. Let's put the person in the infirmary and let's monitor his vitals to see where this leads. But I have seen people literally on hunger strike for years that have survived on boost. Because you know what, and the policy is unique too at different places, because some places, once the person eats their first meal, they meet a certain amount of calories, the medical will go ahead and lift the hunger strike and put the person back to where they got to be. Or some people the person will know, like, okay, I'll only eat this amount. So let's say it's 2,400 calories. I don't know what the calories would be. I'll only eat 2,200, and then they don't eat meals for another 3 days. And then they go back and do another 2,200. So they can prolong it. It could tend to be, even though it's a right, it could tend to also be quite manipulative too. I mean, we may not know if he wants to get an image like this out to the public for some generalized pity. And one last thing.
I see some people in the chat saying that he's defending what was done to Richard. I don't see it that way at all. I see it as him explaining to us what the prison guidelines are. He does not believe that Richard Allen should have been in a prison. He's saying he should have been in county lockup. I don't think that he's at all justifying it. He's just a source of explaining to us what has been going on and what the protocol is in a prison when someone's in solitary, not saying that that's where he should be.
The lawyers don't want him to be in that facility anyway. So we don't know if some of the concerns that they're addressing are real concerns, or if it's based on the fact that we're going to do what we can to get him out. So one little bug becomes an infestation.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Anthony. I'm going to play this clip, and I want the folks in the chat to understand that we want to answer your questions. But if there's some of the things that you answer, if you're asking questions that we've covered already, you're going to just have to go back and watch the replay or scroll back.
Okay, let me just scroll ahead to this news clip. And remember, this is back in June. It was just referred to in the papers that we're reading, the June 15th of 2023 hearing. And this is where his lawyers were saying that his mental and physical health is declining. This was right after, I believe, perhaps the first confession.
Drastically deteriorated while being held in isolation of girls, but in recent days, Richard Allen is set to stand trial for the murders of 2 teenage girls, but in recent days, his health has become the center of attention. Allen's lawyers have argued that his mental and physical health has drastically deteriorated while being held in isolation lockup. They've compared his current living conditions to being akin to a prisoner of war. Allen was arrested after ballistic evidence linked him to the crime scene, where the bodies of Abigail Williams and Libby were found in Delphi, Indiana. The girls were last seen hiking in the area, the case eventually turning cold until Allen's arrest last year. Bob Mata is a defense attorney and host of the podcast Defense Diaries, and he joins us now live. Great to have you, Bob.
And look at that. There's Bob Mata from Defense Diaries on this old clip from June 16th or 15th of 2023.
Richard Allen being held at a state-operated prison. How unusual is that? We know defendants in other high-profile murders like Brian Koberger are sitting in jail right now.
Yeah, it's very unusual. And I mean, typically, in case our viewers don't know, jails are where pretrial detainees are typically held, which is somebody that's been arrested and they're awaiting trial. And if they couldn't bond out, they'll typically sit in jail. To send somebody to Department of Corrections or prison, which is where convicted felons go, is highly unusual. And that was obviously one of the primary thrusts of the defense argument, aside from the conditions of his his cell and his personal being and his mental health, which were all brought up ad nauseum yesterday. So yeah, it's very rare. And he is the only pretrial detainee in Westville prison.
And you had an up close look at him yesterday. You said he looked almost like he had been tranquilized. His defense team is trying to get him moved to a county jail for his mental health and well-being, but prosecutors have said Allen's treatment is humane. So is it in the best interest for this trial in the justice system to?
Did you see how he shook his head when she said his confinement is humane? I'll let it play back.
Is humane. So is it in the best interest for this trial in the justice system to move him, Bob?
I noticed those.
I think so. I think if there's any kind of question in terms of his competency leading into trial, because at the end of the day, this trial is about Abby and Libby and getting them justice and getting the families justice. And if this is the guy, then we want a fair trial. We don't want to have to do it again if it gets overturned on appeal because there was some issue with his pretrial detainment. So, I mean, if you're going to err on the side of caution, the move is to transfer him. And basically what came down yesterday in court was that Cass County Jail is more than capable of housing him. It's a jail. They have everything they need. They have the segregation unit because they're concerned, obviously, with other inmates potentially harming him due to the age and the violence that was, brought against these two little girls. And, that's always a concern in jail. So they have everything they need. They have the manpower and the resources because transportation to and from the jail was another big issue in terms of him getting back and forth without seeing any harm done to him. And, I think that the judge ultimately, my gut is saying that she's going to transfer him to Cass County Jail is what I'm thinking.
Really interesting. And
Okay. And eventually he was transferred. I don't know exactly when, but I think it was maybe 6 months ago. So I thought it'd be interesting to take a look back at what was going on around the time of June 15th, 2023, when they started first talking about these confessions, because these confessions are going to start coming into court this week, likely. And that is the deterioration of Richard Allen for the 8 months that he was in the Twizin, the Twizin system, the prison system. In solitary, one-on-one with one of those guards who may or may not have been practicing Odinists, who all of a sudden their patches, disappeared the second that the prosecution found out that the defense was going to start talking about Odinism, but didn't mention that the officers were wearing those patches 2 months ago. He's in a lot of privacy, says Annie, and obviously his family was threatened. Why else the panic? And if any of you listened to any of the streamers who talked about Brad Holder's testimony and Brad Holder's interrogation, he did say in the interrogation, you want to effing bring your wife and daughter into this? We know you did it. That kind of stuff. Not to be quote him exactly. And the one guy that had the patch tattooed on his face. This is all stuff to think about, food for thought. And a lot of this stuff, unless the judge reverses herself and changes her opinion, the jury's not going to hear about it. And in my mind, it's important for the jury to hear about it. Whether or not the prosecution opened the door is going to be based on the latest motion that was just filed on Wednesday. It's going to be up to the judge. Hello, Ann Smith. Thanks for hanging around for 8 months with me. Have you had a chance to watch any of the pretrial YouTubes and seen Judge Gull in action? Yes. I want to start here, though, for today while we're waiting for the reports back from what happens in court today, because we need something to do during the day other than just reading people's tweets. Yeah, a lot of people say that she's worse than Judge K1lling, in their opinion. Hope, thanks for hanging around for 5 months. Look how far you've come since being on Duty Ron's channel. I'm glad you came to YouTube. You're my favorite creator. Oh, thank you so much, Hope. That means a lot to me. Oh, that's my own comment. If you know, you know, says, my brother was held in solitary for 61 days and also gave false confessions out of desperation. The effects of solitary combined with interrogations cannot be overestimated. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So when you listen to the reporting on these confessions, because we're never going to hear the tapes, At least not now, not while this trial is going on. We're not going to hear them. Our fellow law tubers and fellow YouTubers who are in court are going to hear them and they're going to report back. Think about that. Think about the condition he was in and who knows what was happening to him during the time for the months and months leading up to these confessions. Where's the Go Buffs light? Oh, it's, you know what? It's neon, but it's not adjustable. So I can't really use it because it's too bright. I still have it though. Let's Go Buffs. Man, that was a good game on Saturday night. Did anybody watch that game? It's a great game. It didn't end until like 2 a.m. on the East Coast, but looks like we're bowl eligible now. Are we allowed to watch the trial? No. If you want to go to the trial, you have to stand in line overnight, pretty much. Sleep in line because there are only something like 24 spots available to the public. So there are many YouTubers who are there who are hiring line sitters or people who are volunteering to stay in line for them so they can get a seat in the courtroom and watch the trial. Thank you, Dustin. Lisa, I took Indiana State Police had Doug Carter's weeping, threatening, and messages as sincere. It wasn't. He fooled me and I had my guard down. Thank you, Lisa, for being open to other opinions or into just, listening to the evidence. All right, my friends, we have been here for 3 hours. If you would like to see part 2 on this, because we did not even get, we only got, this affidavit is like, or this motion, we're on page 23. It's 136 pages. And look how much we learned in just 23 pages. Hi, Miss Smith. Have you seen recent reporting about the DNA so far? No DNA found. Appears to be Rick's. I don't think they have any. I don't think they're going to find any. Oh, they're not hiring line sitters. They're voluntary. That's so nice. That is so nice of people to do that. So nice. Anyone know if it's true that Brad had a huge black beard at the time? I don't know. Anybody here? There are a lot of people here who know a lot more about this case than I do. And so it's a very collaborative channel that we have here. So there are those in the chat who are local, who have been following this case from jump, may be able to tell you such things as this. It's a case built on coincidence. It sure sounds like it, right? Everybody please hit the thumbs up button and do all the YouTube-ish type things that YouTube likes. Hit the like, hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern, I had to reschedule this show because Bridget Todd had a sick child. Carly Gregg's grandfather is going to be joining me and Bridget Todd to talk about Carly Gregg and is going to be here to answer your questions. I don't think the chat is going to be on for that stream because I cannot risk Carly Gregg's grandfather, who, remember, his daughter is the victim. He's the father of the victim, Ashley Smiley, and he is the grandfather of Carly Gregg, who has been sentenced to life in prison without parole for a crime that she committed when she was 14 years old. So hit the bell on that if you'd like to come back. If you'd like to send any questions in advance for the family or for Bridget, you can do that. Here's my email. I'm going to put it up again. Fanbase@mlittlelaw.com. We will be taking questions in advance so that I'm taking it off so that we can protect the family. For the sanity of your moms, please keep the chat off. I will. I know. Perplex is like, I love many creators, but stand in line for them? Hard no. I don't think I wouldn't even stand in line for myself. Nope. No, nobody sent me any information on it, so I don't know if it's being live streamed. Is Boston 10 going to live stream it? Nobody sent me information on it. I'd like to. Jazia bought me 10 matcha lattes. Thank you, Jazia, who says you might not be camping out in Delphi, but you're doing a fantastic thing, shining light on this case. Thank you. Thank you, Jazia. It's like, people need to hear about it. People need to hear about it, and I'm here, as you know, as a bullhorn for justice and shenanigans and shining the light on the tough topics. There you go. Thank you, Frankie's mom, for the 5. Since the hair in her hand was the sister's but was pulled with skin, And a bunch. Was the sister investigated? There's a 20-foot dip in the road near there. I do not know. I do not know if the sister was investigated. I do know that the sister gave them the sweatshirts. Didn't she give them the sweatshirts? I don't know. Lots of questions. Hopefully we'll learn some more about that in the trial that is coming forth. Yeah, hit the bell, because if I can find that the Karen Reed civil hearing is being streamed on any news channel, I'm just going to go live with it. I'll just go live, because that's my jam. Yes, sweatshirts, right? They were her sweatshirts. All right. Andrew would stand in line for Beyonce, Eminem, and free cupcakes. I'm 44, so I'd still need a seat. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much, my friends, to the moderators who are amazing. You guys are amazing. You keep it classy here, and you're amazing. Make sure you have the bell set so you'll know when I go live again, because it could be at a moment's notice and you don't want to miss out. Also, yeah, do all the things. Hit the bell. Love you all with all my heart. Love you all, guys, very much. There's so much more to this case. So much more. We're on page 23 of 136. So it took 3 hours to get through that. I will see you guys real soon. Be cool, be kind, be classy until we meet again. I know you guys can do it. I know you can. If anybody can do it, you guys can.